we present Rope, a radio version of Patrick Hamilton's famous thriller set in the late 1920s. It stars Alan Rickman as Rupert Cadell and Adam Barham as Wyndham Brandon, with Andrew Branch as Charles Granillo, Cyril Luckham as Sir Johnston Kentley, and Moya Leslie as Leela Arden. Rope by Patrick Hamilton.
All right. I'll lock it. Put the key in my pocket and turn on the light.
Put out that light! Put out that light!
All right, steady, Grano. Feeling yourself, Grano? Feeling yourself again, Grano?
Give me some matches.
Matches? You are. Coming.
Oh.
Isn't it about time you pulled yourself together, Grano? Sabo will be here in a quarter of an hour.
You fully understand, Brandon, what we've done.
Do I know what I've done? Yes, I know quite well what I've done. I have done murder.
Yes.
I have committed murder. I have committed passionless, motiveless, faultless, and clueless murder. Bloodless and noiseless murder.
Yes.
An immaculate murder. I have killed. I have killed for the sake of danger and for the sake of killing. And I am alive. Truly and wonderfully alive. That's what I've done, Grano. What's the matter? You getting superstitious?
No, I'm not superstitious.
Then may I put on the light?
No, you mayn't. Brandon.
Yes?
You remember when Ronald came in?
What do you mean, when Ronald came in?
When Ronald came in here, when he came in from the car, you were standing at the door.
Yes?
Did you see anyone standing there? Up the street, about 70 yards?
No.
But there was someone, there was a man. I saw him, I remembered.
Well, what of it?
Nothing. Brandon.
Yes?
When I met him, coming out of the Colosseum, when I met him and got him into the car, ready to bring him here, why shouldn't someone have seen us then?
What do you mean by someone?
Someone, anyone. Did we think of that, Brandon?
I did.
It's in the room, you know. Do you think we'll get away with it?
When, tonight?
Yes.
Are you suggesting that some psychic force emanating from this chest is going to advise Sir Johnston Kentley of the fact that the remains, or shall I say, the lifeless entirety of his 20-year-old son and heir is contained therein? My dear Granillo, if you're feeling in any way insecure, perhaps I'd better fortify you with a brief summary of facts. With mathematics, as it were. Let me please give you... What?
Listen, I tell you. It's all right. I thought it was Sabo.
Sabo, in the first place, will not be here until 5 minutes to 9, if then, for Sabo is seldom punctual. Sabo, in the second place, has been deprived by a wily master of his key. He will therefore ring. Let me, I say, give you a cool narration of our transactions. This afternoon, at about 2 o'clock, young Ronald Kentley, our fellow undergraduate, left his father's house with the object of visiting the Colosseum Music Hall. He did so. After the performance, he was met in the street by your good self and invited to this house. He was then given tea, and at 6:45 precisely, done to death by strangulation and rope. He was subsequently deposited in this chest. Tonight, at 9 o'clock, his father, Sir Johnston Kentley, and 3 well-chosen friends of ours will come round here for regalement. They will talk small talk and depart. After the party
This
at
party,
11 o'clock...
it isn't a slip, is it, Brandon?
Oh, my dear Grano, have we not already agreed that the entire beauty and piquancy of the evening will reside in the party itself? Now, at 11 o'clock tonight, I was saying, you and I will leave by car for Oxford. We will carry our fellow undergraduate. Our fellow undergraduate will never be heard of again. Our fellow undergraduate will not be murdered. He will be missing. That is the complete story and the perfection of criminality. The complete story of the perfect crime. I'm quite lucid, am I not?
Yes.
The party itself, Grano, you see, so far from being our vulnerable point, is the very apex, as it were, and consummation of our feat. Consider its ingredients. I still don't think we could have chosen better. There will be first, and by all means foremost, Sir Johnston Kentley, the father of the occupant of the chest. It is he, as the father, who gives the entire macabre quality of the evening. Well chosen so far. We then, of course, require his wife, but she, being an invalid, was unobtainable, alas.
Hello? Hello? What? What? Put out that light! Put out that light, I tell you!
Steady, Grano!
Hello, hello!
Will you put down that receiver, Grano? You're telling London you're afraid! Come over here and sit down.
Yes. Well, go on.
There are then Kenneth Raglan and Leela Arden. They have been asked for their youth, innocence and good spirits alone. Also in Raglan, who went to the same school and is at the same university as ourselves, you have about the most perfect specimen of ordinary humanity obtainable, and therefore a suitable witness to this so extraordinary scene. So, unintellectual humanity is represented. The same applies to Leela, his female counterpart. We then come to Rupert. Now, in Rupert, Grano, we have a very intriguing proposition. Rupert, in fact, is about the one man alive who might have seen this thing from our angle. That is, the artistic one. You will recall that we even contemplated at one time inviting him to share our dangers. And we eventually turned the notion down, not necessarily because it would have been too much for him to swallow intellectually, but simply because he would not have had the nerve. Rupert is a damnably brilliant poet, but perhaps a little too fastidious. So, he is in the same blissless ignorance as the rest. Nevertheless, he is intellect's representative and valued at that. Grano?
Yes?
What's the time?
Nearly 5 to 9.
Sabo will be here at any moment now.
I know.
May I put on the light?
Oh, must you?
Yes, I must.
Can't you go on talking?
No, I can't, I'm afraid.
Go on. I'm all right. Put it on. I'm better now.
Thank you. I thought you were going to lose your nerve for a moment, Grano.
So did I. But I wasn't.
God, you fool! Didn't I tell you to check up in here?
What?
On the floor. Look at this, the boys' Coliseum ticket. We could hang on that. What in heaven's name?
Give it to me. It must have fallen out of my waistcoat pocket. I put it here.
Damnation, that Sabo. Now, for God's sake, quiet yourself and sit down. Read the paper or play the piano or something.
Good idea. The piano.
Play something soothing. I'll let Sabo in. Sorry for my little outburst, Grano, but it rather upset me.
Not at all. You were right.
What's the time?
It's just after 5 to.
Then we can expect our first guest.
Yes.
I must go and let Sabo in. Sabo.
Good evening, sir. Sorry I'm a little late.
Never mind, Sabo. The food's already in the kitchen. As the dining room's all covered with books, will you lay the supper on the chest in the sitting room?
But I can bring the table from upstairs, sir.
Oh, no, that's all right, Sabo. Lay it on the chest.
No, sir, it will be no trouble to bring from upstairs.
Nevertheless, Sabo, lay it on the chest, will you?
Very good, sir. In here?
In here.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Sabo.
That's it. Plates and things on the sideboard, please. Food on the chest.
Yes, sir. Like this, sir?
Yes, perfect. Here we are. He's early, whoever it is.
To bring in here, sir?
Yes, in here.
Very good, sir.
Don't stop playing, Grandma.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Is it good, Colin?
Yes, please do.
This way.
I'm not late, am I?
No, sir. Mr. Hangland, sir.
Hello, Raglan, old man. Come right in. You know Granillo, don't you?
Rather. Quite a long time since we met, though.
Yes, isn't it? Oh. I say, I'm terribly sorry. I've come dressed.
My dear fellow, my fault entirely. Come and seat yourself. I should have explained. You see, we're going up to Oxford tonight.
Oh, no. Are you? I'm not going up till Friday.
Now, what are you going to drink? You can have gin and Italian or gin and Angostura, and I can do you a very nice gin and French.
I should like gin and it, I think.
Gin and it, right. Yes, we leave tonight about 12 and travel by automobile in the, let us hope, moonlight. And of course, this place is simply covered with books.
Covered with books?
Yes, in the next room. I've come into a library. Here's your gin and it.
Oh, thanks. Come into a library?
Yes. Did you ever hear of old Jerry Wickham, Kenneth? An uncle of mine.
Oh, yes, rather.
Well, you'll know that he's died just lately.
Oh, has he? Yes?
Well, it's his library, which is very kindly and unexpectedly bestowed upon me.
Good Lord.
To the unspeakable mortification of Sir Johnston Kentley.
Oh, Sir Johnston Kentley. He's quite a famous collector, isn't he?
Yes, he's coming here tonight.
Good heavens, is he? It is the same man, isn't it? He lives in Grosvenor Square and has a son.
Quite right, Kenneth. He lives in Grosvenor Square. And has a son. Have you got a drink, Grano? Oh, yes. Well, drink up, Kenneth.
Cheer-ho. Tell me, Sir Johnston's son, isn't that Ronald Kentley, the lad who's so frightfully good at sport?
That's right. You don't know him, do you?
No, I've never met him, but he wins hurdles and hundreds of yards and things like that, doesn't he?
Yes, that's right. As a matter of fact, he's the living image of yourself. Isn't he, Grano?
Yes. Yes, he is like.
Me? In what way?
Oh, in every way. Same age, same height, same colour, same sweet and refreshing innocence.
Oh, shut up. I'm not an athlete anyway.
No, but you're just as much alive. In fact, more so.
Am I? Then you're having Sir Johnston here just sort of to make him grind his teeth with envy about the books, then?
Oh, on the contrary. I'm going to let him have exactly what he wants, provided I don't want it. But I'm telling you all this, Kenneth, just to excuse the terrible mess we're in. You'll observe that we're having our meal off a chest.
Oh, yes. I thought it looked rather weird.
Good Lord, Kenneth. You're getting positively fat.
Am I?
Nothing like the little boy who used to fag for me at school.
Lord, that's a while ago.
But it doesn't seem so very long.
Of course, I used to think you an absolute hero in those days, Brandon.
Did you? Well, as a matter of fact, I was always more or less popular amongst the juniors.
It was I who was the unpopular one.
Were you unpopular, Grano?
Oh, yes, I remember I used to loathe you in those days.
There you are.
Why did you loathe him?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose games were the only things that ever counted in those days. I'm sure it was most unreasonable.
It was, I assure you. I'm very harmless.
Here we are. I wonder if that's Rupert. Did you ever meet Rupert, Kenneth? Rupert Cadell?
No, I can't say that I have.
No, he was before your time, wasn't he? Aha! the ravishing Leela. Come along, my dear, this way. How are you? You know Grano, don't you?
Hello.
How do you do?
And this is Kenneth. Mr. Raglan, Miss Arden.
Hello.
Hello. Now, what are you going to have, Leela? Kenneth's having a gin and it.
I'd adore one.
Gin and it shall be.
Of course, I simply know that I've seen you somewhere before.
Really?
You're not a French and on-sea expert, are you?
No, I just go there occasionally, that's all.
How weird, because I could simply swear that I've seen you somewhere before.
How weird.
Previous incarnation, I expect. Here you are, Leela.
Thank you.
Excuse mess. We're in a horrible mess here altogether. Kenneth will tell you about it. I've come into a library.
Come into a library, my dear.
Yes. And I hope you don't think you're going to get anything to eat, because all the servants are away and we're very humble.
No, you told me that, and I had a simply gluttonous high tea. Gorged, my dear.
Oh, well, that's all right. I really wouldn't have asked you, only this is the last chance of seeing you before we go up.
Are you going up tonight, then?
Yes.
Of course, I'm feeling absolutely ghastly coming dressed like this.
Why? I'm sure I ought to be dressed too. Of course, you must admit, my dear, this is a most mysterious and weird meal.
Why? Mysterious and weird.
Oh, I don't know, Grano. Just mysterious and weird. Such a queer time to begin with.
Here we are. I'll bet you that's old Kentley. Forgive me a moment, I must go and usher him in.
Who's the newcomer?
The newcomer, Leela, is the revered Sir Johnston Kentley, who has come here to look at books.
My
Well,
dear.
unless it's Rupert, which of course it may be. Oh, no. No, it's Sir Johnston, all right.
Which, of course, can never be done. How do you do, Granillo? And how are you getting on?
Oh, very well, thank you, sir.
Now, let me introduce you all. Miss Arden, Sir Johnston Kentley.
How do you do?
Do?
And this is Mr. Kenneth Raglan.
How do you do, sir?
Do do?
And here, Sir Johnston, is an armchair, which I think is more or less in your line. And here is a chest, from which we're going to feed, the table having been commandeered for books.
Oh, that chest. It's not a Cassone, is it?
No, sir, it's not genuine. It's a reproduction, but it's a rather nice piece. I got it in Italy. Now, will you have a cocktail, sir?
Oh, good heavens, no, my boy. Now, these books I'm going to see, where are they?
Oh, they're in the other room, the dining room. I laid them out as well as I could, and there's more space in there.
Oh, I shall be most interested to see them, most interested. I seem to remember that Wickham had a really remarkable little lot of Shakespeareana.
Yes. Ah, that will be Rupert. I'm afraid, sir, the folios were sold before Wickham died. But there's a run of the quartos and a really amazing lot of Baconian stuff. At least I'm told it's very fine.
Mr. Cadell, sir.
Ah, here he is, here he is. Last as usual. Come along in, Rupert. Mr. Cadell, Miss Leela Arden.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Mr. Cadell, Sir Johnston Kentley.
How do you do, sir?
How do you do?
Mr. Raglan, Mr. Cadell.
How do you do?
But tell me, I don't quite follow. Have I come dressed, or have others come undressed? I telephoned an inquiry, but could not obtain, any answer.
Now contain yourself, Rupert, and sit down.
What in heaven is this?
This is a chest, Rupert, and we're going to have our meal off it.
Oh, are we?
Yes,
Why are we going to have our meal off a chest?
because it's a very nice chest, and because all the tables are covered with books.
Yes, haven't you heard? The entire place is covered with library.
No.
Now, Rupert, are you going to have a cocktail?
No, thank you. I've had 4 already.
4?
Yes, why? Aren't I carrying my drink?
Yes, you're carrying it all right. It's just rather a mean advantage, that's all.
That's all right, Sabo. I'll ring when we're through, then you can clear and get away.
Thank you, sir.
When do we begin to have our meal off a chest? Because I'm personally rather peckish.
We're starting right away, Rupert. Now, look here, you people. There are lots of plates and knives and things on the sideboard, and lots of sandwiches and things on the chest. Pate, caviar, salmon and cucumber, whatnot. All you've got to do is to rally round and help yourselves.
That's marvellous. Come on, then.
Oh,
Splendid.
Oh, look at this. I adore caviar, don't you?
Yes, rather. Wait a minute and I'll get you some.
What will you have, sir?
Yes, do
Oh, just a sandwich, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Are you the great Cadell?
The great Cadell, sir. Why? Do you know anything about me?
Well, I've read your poems, that's all. Or at least a lot of them.
Dear me, I hope you're not confusing me with the other Cadell, sir.
No, I don't think so. You write poems, don't you?
I am told so, sir, but then so does the other Cadell, a devastating creature who spells it with 2 Ds.
Oh, no, there's no confusion.
I never knew you could spell Cadell with 2 Ds.
Same here.
Yes, same here. I knew a Cadell once, and she used to spell it with only 1 D, Louisa Cadell. Horrible old hag she was, too. She lived in Bayswater.
Dear heaven, the young man is alluding to my aunt.
Oh, I say, I'm terribly sorry. Have I dropped a brick?
No, you've said a mouthful. Can I have another sandwich? I say, must we have our meal off a chest?
Is Lady Kentley any better, sir?
No, I'm afraid not. I'm afraid she's still in bed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, and how's Ronald getting on?
Oh, Ronald. Oh, he's getting on all right. He's merely idling, of course, now, like you two.
Does he like it, or does he want to get back?
Oh, no, he doesn't want to get back. He has a great time.
Who's Ronald?
Ronald, he's my son and heir. 20 years of age.
Oh, I know Ronald. He was in the papers the other day for winning the high jump at the varsity sports.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, I remember it well. There was a picture of me next door to it.
Oh, what's that?
Yes. Not, though, for winning the high jump. Oh, yes, quite an old friend.
Yes, he's a sprightly lad, is Ronald.
Brandon says he's like me. Is that true, sir?
Yes, he is rather like you when you come to think of it. Quite like, really.
I've a double, apparently.
My dear, how excruciating.
In what way is he like me, sir?
Well, I don't know, just in general usefulness.
And innocence and freshness and gaiety.
Shut up, Brandon.
He's so afraid they won't think him a man, isn't he?
That's like Ronald, too. I'm afraid they won't feel like that for long, though.
No, they won't, poor dears.
Of course. My boy's the most infantile thing in the world. I honestly believe his only passion in holiday time is the movies. When I saw him at lunch, he was just rushing off to the Coliseum.
Yeah, but that's not the movies, is it? I thought it was a music hall. Not that I know. I've never been there in my life.
Never been to the Colosseum?
Why should he have been to the Coliseum?
I thought everybody had been.
Well, I haven't.
Neither have I. Is that the place in the Haymarket?
My dear Grano, you're mixing it up with the Capitol. What abysmal ignorance.
You'd have been a sad dog as an ancient Roman, Granillo.
Yes, he would. Indeed, in the days of the Caesars, the results of confusing the Colosseum with the Capitol would have been, I should imagine, almost fatal. But turn to the 20th century for just one moment. Do you mean to tell me, Granillo, that you have never been to the Colosseum?
No. No, of course I haven't. Never. Why?
You mean you can stand there and puff out your chest and tell me that you have never been to the Colosseum?
Yes. Why? Why should you think that I had?
Merely the hawk-like sharpness of my vision.
Why? Is it a crime never to have been to the Coliseum?
No, sir. I don't expect it's a crime.
For in that case, I'm afraid I myself am guilty.
But young Ronald has been to the Coliseum anyway, sir.
Yeah, that's right.
I simply must have one more of these delicious sandwiches.
Let me.
You know, I'm coming to the conclusion that there's some ulterior motive about this chest picnic.
What do you mean, ulterior motive?
Ah, you mean it's done purely to make you spill things on your trousers, Rupert?
I think it's more than likely.
Oh, I suspect much worse than that. I think they've committed murder. And the chest is simply chock full of rotting bones. It's just the sort of thing for rotting bones, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
My dear, you're right. I wouldn't let you see the inside of that chest for worlds.
I'm sure you wouldn't.
Try one of these sandwiches, Leela.
Oh, thank you. It's all very well to try and bluff me out and pretend you're willing to let me see
But
inside.
my dear, that's just what I said I wouldn't do.
I have my suspicions.
Yes, but surely your murderer, having chopped up and concealed his victim in a chest, why, wouldn't ask all his friends round to come and eat off it?
Not unless he was a very stupid and very conceited murderer.
Very stupid and very conceited.
Which, of course, he might be.
In fact, it's exactly what all criminals are.
Oh, no, I don't think so. Well, anyway, who says books?
Oh, that's a very good idea.
I have a gramophone for the very young, if they care to make use of it.
But I thought you said the next room was covered with books.
Oh, no, there's room to dance. This way, Sir Johnston.
Oh, thank you.
Come along, the rest of you, when you want to, that is. I've dozens of records in there.
You coming, Leela?
Oh, rather.
You dance,
Well, Rupert.
Well, my dear Grano, you look rather fagged out.
Oh, do I? I don't feel it.
What have you been doing with yourself?
Doing with myself? Oh, nothing. Why do you ask?
For no reason whatever. You seem rather touchy.
Yes, I'm a bit liverish. I've been sleeping most of the afternoon, and that always puts me out for the rest of the day.
Ah, that's what I do.
You writing anything lately?
Yes, a little thing about doves, and a little thing about rain. Both good. Very good, in fact. And then, of course, I'm getting ahead with the big work.
Oh, that going well?
Yes, very. Indeed, it promises to be not only the best thing I've ever written, but the best thing I have ever read. That tune. It's rather nice, isn't it?
Mm.
So, you and Brandon leave tonight for Oxford.
That's right.
What time are you going?
We're aiming to start about 10:30.
Arriving there about when?
Oh, about 3? Or why?
Peculiar form of enjoyment, Grano, but then that's like you.
Oh, why? Lovely moonlight night.
It's not, it's raining already.
It's not?
Yes, it is, listen.
Oh. Oh, yes. Yes, it is coming down, isn't it?
Excuse me, Grano. Reaching across you,
yes.
there's a book on the mantelpiece. Got it. Thank you. Oh. Joseph Conrad. Dear me. Dear me.
Bravo, you're wanted!
Oh, coming. You coming along too, Rupert?
No, I'm all right. With this book from the mantelpiece, and this Colosseum ticket from your waistcoat pocket. Stalls for the 17th. Come in.
Excuse me, sir. May I clear the chest, sir?
Yes, Sabo.
Thank you, sir.
How are you getting on?
Very well, thank you, sir.
It's going to be a dirty night.
Yes, sir. It is set in now, sir.
I suppose Mr. Brandon will still be going, though.
Pardon, sir?
I suppose Mr. Brandon will still be going, though, to Oxford.
Oh, yes, sir. I suppose so, sir.
Have you any idea of the date, Sabo?
The date, sir? Yes, sir. It is the 16th, sir.
The...
No, sir. No, sir. It is not, sir. It is the 17th, sir.
Yes, I thought so. The 17th. Stalls for the 17th. Have you been getting into trouble lately, Sabo?
Trouble, sir?
Yes, trouble. I was wondering whether you had been getting into any trouble with your employers.
Me, sir? No, sir. What should make you think so, sir?
Well, I telephoned this house at 9:15 and heard the most hysterical noises.
Hysterical noises, sir?
Hysterical, Sabo, noises. Somebody had evidently lost their nerve. I was wondering whether you were the cause of it.
Me, sir? Oh, no, sir, not me, sir. I was not here till 5 to 9.
Then are you the one that frequents the Colosseum, Sabo?
Yes, sir.
I said, are you the one that frequents the Colosseum?
Oh, sir, I did not hear, sir. Pardon, sir. The Colosseum, sir? No, sir.
You don't?
The music hall, sir?
Yes.
No, sir, no, sir. Well, I have been there once, sir, many years ago.
But not lately.
No, sir.
Strange. Well, someone in this house frequents the Colosseum, Sabo, and Mr. Brandon and Mr. Granillo have both declared that they have never been there. Yet I found this Colosseum ticket in Mr. Granillo's waistcoat pocket. Which leaves me wondering, is it Mr. Granillo who frequents the Colosseum?
Mr. Granillo, sir?
Or is it Mr. Brandon who frequents the place?
Mr. Brandon, sir.
Hello, hello, Mr. Brandon. What's all this about Mr. Brandon?
I was just asking the good Sabo Brandon whether Mr. Brandon would still travel to Oxford in all this rain. Wasn't I, Sabo?
Yes, sir.
Well, I hope he told you that we are. What's a little rain, anyway? Now, have we any whiskey left? Oh, yes. I'll just take all this into the others. Yeah, I'll be back in a minute. That's all right, Sabo. You can go straight away now that that's cleared.
Thank you, sir.
Back in a minute.
That, Sabo, was what we call a white one.
A white one, sir? Ah, sir, yes, sir. A white one, sir. Bonsoir, monsieur.
Good night, Sabo. I wonder.
Hello? Sabo gone?
Yes, Sabo gone.
They want more cigarettes now. Where are they?
Brandon? I've just thought of something rather queer.
Something queer? What's that?
All this talk about rotting bones in chests.
Talk about rotting bones in chests, Rupert?
Yes.
What about them?
Do you remember when you were an infant, Brandon? Mm-hmm. How you used to tell me stories around the fire?
Yes, rather, I remember.
Remember your chest complex, Brandon?
My chest complex?
Yes. Whatever the story was, piratical, detective, murder, adventure, or ghost, it always contained a marvelous denouement with a bloody chest containing corpses. You had a perfect mania for it, don't you remember?
Yes, I'd forgotten that.
Why should you have remembered it?
Yes, it's quite true. I remember now. What about it, though?
Oh, nothing, just queer, that's all.
Oh, queer, exactly.
Just queer, us all talking tonight about rotting bones in chests. It just came back to me, that's all. How's the old man getting on with his books?
Going to take the entire library away with him as far as I can see. I'm simply saying goodbye to it. Why don't you come in and watch him at it?
Yes, I think I will. And I like that tune. I say, what's the time? I want to be home fairly early tonight.
Plenty of time, come along. I'll just switch off the lights in here. Now I've left the cigarettes I was told to fetch. Go along in, Rupert. I'll be in a moment.
Oh, very well.
Come join us.
Who's there?
Devil's the matter with you? Hello.
Oh, God.
Tell me what's the matter.
What are you doing there in the dark? I thought it was him. I thought it was him. I thought it was Ronald.
Here, let me switch on the light. There. Now drink some of this. Be quick, man.
Why were you trying to frighten me?
I wasn't trying to frighten you. Why do you want to sneak in like that?
I wanted to see that everything was all right. Oh, I'm sorry. My nerves going. I'll be all right. Pour me another.
Oh. Very well then, but pull yourself together. I say, Grandma.
Yes?
You've got that little ticket, haven't you? You'd better give it to me and we'll destroy it right away. Now.
Ticket?
Ronald's ticket.
Ronald's ticket.
Oh, don't dither, Grano. Ronald's ticket. Ronald's Colosseum ticket.
Ronald's Colosseum ticket.
Shh. Not so loud. Yes.
got the Colosseum ticket?
Oh, don't be a fool, Grano. I gave it to you.
You didn't give it to me.
Grano?
Oh, wait. It's in my waistcoat pocket. Yes.
Grano?
You didn't...
Here, pocket.
You didn't give it to me.
Look again.
I never had it.
I gave it to you into your hand.
Didn't I never
gave
had
it
it
into your hand.
As if you got it.
I gave it. I haven't got it. I tell you, where is it?
It's in my waistcoat pocket.
Oh, you put it in your waistcoat. You put it in your waistcoat pocket. Where is it now? Where is it now?
Yeah, Brandon, what have you lost?
Oh, my temper, Rupert. Sorry, Grano.
It's all right.
Oh, I hope I'm not interfering.
No, it's my fault. You didn't know that Grano and I behave like that, did you, Rupert? But we often have our little outbursts like this. Always about trifles, eh, Grano?
Yes.
Oh. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm here on an errand.
An errand?
Yes, I want some rope.
Rope?
Yes, why so excited? Rope. The young people in the other room, having exhausted the lyric possibilities of the gramophone, are now projecting their entire youthful elan and ingenuity into the composition of a parcel, and they want something to do it up with.
A parcel?
Yes, the old man's books.
Oh, of course.
You better see what goes into it. I'm sure he's lifting all your best. Oh, hello. Here we are. I thought it was coming.
Damnation.
Surely you're not going to Oxford in all this.
Oh, yes, we'll go. I'd clear up soon. Besides, got nowhere to sleep here. Beds have all been dismantled.
Well, that needn't worry you. You can come round and put up with me if you care. I've plenty of room.
No, thank you, old boy. Think we'll try and make it.
Very well. Have it your own way.
Oh, did you hear that?
We heard it all right. We're scared out of our wits.
I know, and it's simply coming down in sheets. Surely you're not going to Oxford tonight.
Certainly we are.
But, my dear, you can't. You'll be simply swamped out, my dear. Flooded, my dear.
I hear you want some string, Lila.
Yes, so we do. Kenneth, where are the books? Oh, here we are. We're going to make a parcel, my dear. Come on.
All right.
We've got some paper. Now, where's the string?
Oh, the string's in the other room. I'll get it. No, I'll get it. Where is it? It's in that sort of big vase thing, you know.
Do you know the sort of big vase thing, Kenneth?
Oh, yes, I know. I'll get it.
Isn't he sweet?
Yes, he is rather a lamb.
Yes. A decided duck.
Here we are. Oh, and
Well
Sir
done.
Johnston wants to know where he can browse on that sort of top shelf thing. I didn't quite
Oh,
follow.
yes, I know what he means. I say, Grano, put that glass down and go in and explain to him.
Oh, fine.
Poor old man's getting into hopeless muddles.
It's all right. Oh, I'll go.
Just a little, I think.
I should say completely.
What? Grano Blotto? Yes, he is a bit.
Well, help me with this thing. There's dear. Oh, my hat!
I believe you're afraid of storms, Leela.
My dear, I am. I simply rush round in circles. It's hereditary, you know. Should see my mother.
What does she rush round in?
My dear, she doesn't. She simply hides herself in cupboards.
Really?
All entangled in the linen, my dear. If it comes on again, you'll probably all see me suddenly take a violent plunge into this chest.
I should love to see that.
Head foremost, my dear. By the way, can you get into this chest, or is it locked? Oh, put your finger on this knot for me, Kenneth. That's it.
Right.
Can you get into this chest, Brandon? Or is it locked?
What? Oh, yes. You can get into it if you want to.
Oh, well then, I'm safe.
Isn't there a lock on it, though?
Yes, there is.
Oh, my dear, you've forgotten. He's got his murdered man in here.
Oh, so he has. We'd forgotten that, hadn't we?
Well, you may have. I hadn't. Finger on the knot again, Kenneth, please.
Like that?
Yes, that's what he's been committing. Murder. Finger tighter, please. And we've caught him red-handed.
Oh, Leela, you don't know how near the mark you are.
Oh, don't I? I know exactly what's inside this chest.
What?
There's an old man. You picked him up selling papers in the street, and you did him to death for the gold fillings in his teeth. You've a lust for gold, my dear.
I see you've been following me.
It is locked, isn't it? But why a padlock? What have you got in it?
But you know, Leela, You have already explained to us what is in it.
I honestly think you ought to let us have a look. Have you got the key?
Yes, I've got the key. It's in my waistcoat pocket.
Well, hand it over and let's have a look inside.
I'm hanged if I do.
But why not, my dear? If you're really innocent, you can prove it, dear.
But how often have I to tell you, Leela, that I am not innocent? My hands are red with a crime committed less than 3 hours ago.
Oh, well, if you won't, you won't. All the same, if I had strong men about me, they'd force it from you.
I'll be your strong man.
Will you, Kenneth? All right, go and be strong.
How do I do that?
Oh, that's up to you.
All right, then. Now then, Mr. Brandon, hand it over, or it'll be the worse for you.
Said he, eyeing the other fearlessly.
Come and get it, Kenneth.
Which pocket is it in?
Top. Right.
My right or yours?
Mine.
Go on, seize it.
I'll give him 10 seconds, shall I?
That's right.
Right you are. 10 seconds.
1, 2, 3,
Won't you surrender?
No.
4, 5, 6, 7. Hooray! My dears, what will men not do for me? Slaughtering each other, of course.
Mr. Raglan, we cannot on every occasion be strong, but it is always possible to be silent. What is he doing, dear?
I thought he'd bust my arm. I say, Brandon, you don't know your own strength, you know. You gave it an absolutely foul tug.
Kenneth, I'm profoundly sorry. Really?
No, that's all right. That's what you used to do to me at school. So I'm not your strong man after all, Leela.
Never mind. You come back to the mother heart. I think he's a beast.
No, Leela. Only a desperate criminal, that's all.
How fearfully interested in crime we all seem to be tonight. Why poor Brandon can't be allowed to commit his own murders in quiet, I don't know.
Ah, it's a simple question of bringing assassins to justice.
How would you do that?
Why? By having them arrested, of course.
Oh, would that do it? I've heard of assassins being brought to the Old Bailey, but I've seldom heard of them being brought to justice. I hope you're not confusing the two.
I say, are you one of those people who don't approve of capital punishment?
I think possibly I approve of murder too much to approve of capital punishment.
Prove of murder?
My dear Leela, there are so many people that I would so willingly murder, particularly the members of my own family, and including the aunt so felicitously described by Mr. Raglan as living in Bayswater, that it would be positively disingenuous to say that I don't approve of murder. Furthermore, I have already committed murder myself.
How do you get that?
It's all simply a question of scale. You, my friends, have paradoxically a horror of murder on a small scale, a veneration for it on a large. That is the difference between what we call murder and war. One gentleman murders another in a back alleyway in London for, let us say, since you have suggested it, the gold fillings in his teeth, and all society shrieks out for revenge upon the miscreant. And they call that murder. But when the entire youth and manhood of a whole nation rises up to slaughter the entire youth and manhood of another, not even for the gold fillings in each other's teeth, then society condones and applauds the outrage and calls it war. How then can I say that I disapprove of murder, seeing that I have, in the last great war, acted on these assumptions myself? A lamentable thing, certainly, and responsible for the fact that tonight, instead of being able to fool around the gramophone with you two, a thing I should very much like to have done, I have to hobble about like an old man. But the point is that I have proved that I don't disapprove of murder. Haven't I?
No, you've done nothing of the sort. You'd be the first to be horrified by murder if it happened under your own nose.
I wonder.
Besides, You must have some moral standards.
Must I? I can't recall any.
Don't be absurd. You wouldn't hurt a fly.
Wouldn't I? I've had thousands in my time. What are your own moral standards, then, Leela?
Mine?
Oh, Leela believes in the Ten Commandments, doesn't she?
Oh, no, surely not.
Why? What's wrong with the Ten Commandments?
Nothing whatever. Indeed, I have no doubt that they were of the profoundest significance to the nomadic needs of the tribe to whom they were delivered. Their inadequacy and irrelevance for today, though, must be sufficient to condemn them. I've often attempted to discover whether it is within the range of any of us to observe even one of them. Honour thy father and mother? Of course I do. How could I do otherwise? Indeed, on the occasion of my birthday, I have never failed to send them a telegram of congratulation. Though whether this will make my days any longer in the land which has been given us must remain in doubt. But look at the others. Keep holy the Sabbath day. I don't. Take not the name of the Lord in vain. I do. Thou shalt do no murder. But I have done murder, as I've explained.
And the seventh, Rupert?
Committed. Since infancy. Thou shalt not steal. But property itself, as Proudhon has explained to us, is theft, and I am a man of property. Moreover, these are your matches.
Where did you...
Indeed, the only clause I am sincerely capable of adhering to is the little stricture concerning my neighbour's ox and my neighbour's ass. Few and far between as are my neighbours who own oxes, and fewer and farther between as are my neighbours who own asses, I honestly think I could face either type in an emergency with a pure heart. But then it might be different if I lived in a rural district.
Well, anyway, I still say that you'd never commit a murder. Your conscience wouldn't let you.
Ah. But have I a conscience?
He's quite right. And for one who hasn't a conscience, I can understand murder being an entirely engrossing adventure.
You mean a motiveless murder?
Yes.
Yes, that really does happen sometimes, doesn't it? You do get people who murder purely sort of for the fun of the thing, don't you?
What a peculiar idea of fun.
No, but I've heard of cases like that.
Certainly you have, and I for one can certainly enter into the excitement of it. The only trouble about that sort of thing is that you're bound to be found out.
Why should you be found out?
Because, my dear Brandon, that sort of murder would not be a motiveless murder at all. It would have quite a clear motive. Vanity. It would be a murder of vanity. And because of that, the criminal would be quite unable to keep from talking about it or showing it off in some fantastic way or another. The trouble with that sort of murderer is that he can't keep quiet about it. He won't hide it up. He wants to boast about it and say something, do something, and maybe something only just slightly outre, which gives him away. They have always done it, and they always will.
But then, suppose your murderer, your really ideal, brilliantly clever and competent murderer, a genius at it, I mean. Suppose he was alive to the fact that vanity was the Achilles heel to the thing, and went specially out of his way to see that he wouldn't get caught like that. I'm talking of a genius at it.
Oh, yes, but then he'd never be able to keep from talking about the very fact that he was so brilliantly clever, as you put it. So he'd give himself away just the same.
Yes, but he might be so clever.
Might. But wouldn't. Don't you think so?
Here we are. It's coming back again.
Lord, yes, I'm getting sick of this storm.
Yes, so am I. I say, you know, it's really about time I ought to be going.
Yes. Same here, really.
What an uncanny coincidence. Now you'll both be able to go together.
I say, isn't it absolutely awful?
Isn't it terrible? Are you really still going to Oxford, you two?
Certainly. The storm's probably only just around London. Besides, it's not so bad now. It's not raining, as a matter of fact, now, if you're thinking of getting off.
No, that's what I thought.
Same here.
Which is another curious
Oh,
coincidence.
do shut up.
Excuse me. Hello? Sorry, I can't hear. It's thundering this end. What? Who? Who? Oh, yes, rather. Will you hold the line a minute? I'll get him. Right you are. Just hold on. It's for Sir Johnston. Sir Johnston, you're wanted on the telephone, sir.
Telephone for me?
Yes, sir, they're holding on. It's in this room.
Oh, thank you.
Here we are.
Excuse me, please. Hello, yes? Oh, yes. That you, dear? Yes. No, he's not here. Yes, that's right. That's quite right, dear. Huh? Oh, no. He'll be back soon, I expect. He's probably held up in the what? Yes, dear. Well, I'll be back there soon now. I'll be coming pretty well straight away. Huh? Yes, dear, yes. Right you are. Goodbye. Ronald hasn't come back.
Hasn't come back?
No.
Oh, that's the storm.
Yes, that's what it must be.
Didn't you say he'd been to the Colosseum?
Yes, that's right.
Was he expected back then, sir?
Yes, apparently he arranged to get back to tea. My wife gets so alarmed if there's any hitch.
Well, he'll probably be back by the time you get home.
Yes, I expect he will. Well, I must be off. Where did I leave my hat and coat? Oh, yes, out in the hall.
Yes, I'll go and get them.
Sir Johnston, we've got your parcel all ready.
Oh, that is sweet of you. Thank you very much. Say, that's a wonderful parcel, isn't it?
Well, it's not bad, is it?
And I should say not. Yes, that's very convenient.
There you are, sir.
Oh,
it's
thank you.
not raining now. But I expect you'd like a taxi, wouldn't you, sir?
Yes, I think I'd like a taxi. I'd rather like to get back. I can't think where that boy's got to.
Your hat, sir.
What? Oh, thank you. I've never known him fail when he said he'd be back.
Then he must be very filial, sir.
Yes, he is. Well, then it only remains to thank him for the most charming evening, to say nothing of the most charming company. The company being even more delightful than the books. And that's saying an enormous amount. Well, good night, young lady.
Good night.
Good night, young man.
Good night, sir.
And good night, Mr. Cadell.
Good night, sir.
And you know, Brandon, I'll have to give you something in exchange for these books.
Never, sir.
Oh, yes, you must have something back. You must have some swaps, as we used to say. You must have your swaps. Oh, yes.
Now you're forgetting them, sir.
What? Oh, thank you. Oh, this won't do, will it? Just like me. I'm getting on, you know.
Nonsense, sir.
Yeah, I'm getting old, that's my trouble. Well, good night, Brandon. Good night, Granillo.
Good night, Sir Johnston.
Well,
Yes,
I'm going too.
What part do you have to go to?
Oh, I'm South Kensingtonish.
Oh, then we'll get a taxi, shall we? And I'll drop you.
Where then do you live, Mr. Raglan?
Me? Oh, I live up at Hampstead.
Oh, I see. Then it'll be quite easy to drop her.
Well, come along in, Grano.
I think we must go now.
Oh. Well, won't you stay and have another spot?
Oh, no, I don't think so. Thanks awfully. I think I ought to be going.
Yes. Same here. Really.
Well, if you're still going to Oxford tonight, I certainly wouldn't let him drive.
What do you mean?
I will not, Leela, you may be sure. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, Grano.
You certainly ought.
What do you mean?
Well,
Well,
are you coming?
yes, rather.
I'm going too. Good night, Granillo.
Good night, Rupert.
Everyone got everything? Yes.
And do be careful on your way to Oxford.
See you in the next pack. all's well.
God, I thought he'd got onto it.
Oh, Rupert?
Yes.
Yes, so did I for a few moments. But that's what gave a piquancy to the evening. He hadn't.
You're sure he hadn't?
Quite sure. I sometimes rather wish he had. God. Rupert. Queer lad. I wonder. If he'd been with us, he wouldn't have got drunk, Grano.
I'm not drunk. I'm a little blurred, that's all. Hello, what's that?
What?
I thought I heard something.
Oh, be yourself, Grano.
I thought it was the bell. It was.
Well, what of it? I'll go and see. It's Rupert. He's left his cigarette case behind, apparently. Have you seen it?
No.
Well, it must be here somewhere.
Did you find it?
Oh. Hello.
I thought you might give me another spot.
You're welcome, Rupert. Have a seat.
Thank you. Cigarette? I beg your pardon. I had my case in my pocket all the time.
Oh, you ass. Just a splash, Rupert.
Yes, a generous one.
Ah, here.
Thanks. Oh, dear heaven, what unmentionable fatigue.
What?
Living. I wonder if drink is a way out. Grano seems to agree with that.
Yes, but he's not going to get any more.
You're in a horrible state tonight, Granillo. You're positively silent drunk.
Oh, I'm all right.
I say, must we have all this light?
What's wrong with the light?
Nothing is wrong with the light, Granillo, only I'm a creature of half-lights, and seeing that you have a pleasantly shaded little table lamp, can't we make use of it?
Yes, I quite agree. But I hope you're not going to settle down too heavily and make yourself too much at home, because we've got to be off before long.
Oh, that's better. Much better. I'm sad tonight, you know. And what's the time?
5:20 to 11.
5:20 to 11. Expect you're wanting to get rid of me, aren't you?
Not at all, Rupert.
I hope not. I'm full of melancholy and don't want to go home. You must bear with me. It's been such a strange evening.
A strange evening? Why?
Why strange?
I can't tell you. That's my trouble. I suppose it's the thunder. One thing and another. Thunder always upsets me. Besides, I'm always melancholy at this hour. 5:20 to 11. It's a curious hour. Did you ever read Goldsmith's Night Piece?
No, I can't say that I actually recall it.
No, you should. It's about the city at night. I shall do his night piece up to date one of these days, and I shall make it 5:20 to 11. Now. It's a wonderful hour. I am particularly susceptible to it.
Why so wonderful?
Because it is, I think, the hour when London asks why. When it wants to know what it's all about. When the tedium of activity and the folly of pleasure are equally transparent. It's the hour when jaded London theatre audiences are settling down in the darkness to the last act of plays of which they know the denouement only too well. They know that when the curtain's down, it'll be just a question of God save the King, and they'll be bundled out into a chilly, rainy night, where they'll have to fight for taxis, or rush for trains, or somehow transport themselves home to a cold supper and the prospect of another day tomorrow exactly similar to that which has passed. Ugh. It's a horrible hour. I could enlarge upon the idea indefinitely. A macabre hour. For it is not only the hour of pleasure ended, It is the hour when pleasure itself has been found wanting. There. That is what this hour means to me, and it has, moreover, been thundery. 25 to 11.
In brief, my dear Rupert, at this hour of the night, you see no earthly object in living.
I fear not. Do you?
I? Yes, of course I do. But then I'm interested in things. Why don't you get interested in things? Why don't you take up exploring, or cricket, or making love, or golf, or finance, or lecturing, or something?
Or as you suggested this evening, murder.
Or as you say, murder. Now, Rupert, we don't want to turn you
Oh,
out.
surely you're not going to do that. Surely you're not going to spoil my mood.
No, we're not going to spoil any of your moods, but we've got to get going at some time. And we've got a bit of packing to do and one thing and another.
No, you really mustn't spoil my mood. I shall write something tonight if I go on like this.
My dear Rupert, a poetic frame of mind will hardly be induced by the spectacle of Grano and me filling suitcases.
Oh, I certainly think it would. I'll tell you what. I'll stay and see you off.
I'm having another drink.
That's enough of that, Grano.
Mind your own business.
Come along, Grano.
Mind your own business!
Well, it's not my business. Stay and see us off, Rupert. Doesn't look as though we'll get off with Grano in this state.
I'm perfectly sober. Why does he want to stay and see us off? That's what I want to know. Why does he want to stay and see us off?
My dear Grano, Rupert has no earthly reason in wanting to stay and see us off, and I don't know what you're talking about. There's no doing anything with you. I'm getting sick of this. Come along, Rupert. You better go and leave him with me.
Well, I've got to go then.
What do you mean, Rupert? Got to go?
Well, I thought for a moment that perhaps you wanted me to go as well.
Nothing of the sort. I was getting fed up with all this silly chatter and wanted to be alone with Grano, that's all. I don't want you to go.
You don't?
No.
All right, then I'll stay.
I said so. I said so.
Grano, you're in a queer mood tonight too, Rupert.
No, not a queer mood. An inspired mood, rather. One has inspirations, you know, extraordinary inspirations, and I have one tonight.
Oh? What's that?
I'll tell you that, perhaps. You haven't such a thing as a pin, Granillo, have you?
A what?
A pin.
Yes? Yes. What do you want it for?
I want it for my buttonhole.
Here you are.
Rupert, what are you pinning in your buttonhole?
A theatre ticket.
He's got it. He's got it.
Hold your tongue, Grano.
Oh, yes, he's got it. All right.
Hold your tongue.
He's got
Hold your
it.
tongue. Hold your
He's got it.
Rupert.
Yes?
Rupert, this is nothing to do with you. Grano and I have a certain trouble between us which concerns no one else. Will you kindly oblige us by going at once and leaving us to it?
Won't you tell me your trouble, Brandon? I might be able to help.
No, I will not tell you our trouble. Please, go. It's nothing to do with you.
No, Brandon, it may not be anything to do with me. But it may possibly be something to do with the public in general, and I'm its only representative in this room. Won't you tell me?
Are you going, or are you not?
No, Brandon, I'm not going. You see, I'm rather awkwardly situated.
You're something more than that, my friend.
Oh? How's that?
You are very dangerously situated. Very dangerously situated indeed.
Brandon, I have no protection,
You have not.
save that of my foresight.
Foresight?
This whistle. A policeman gave it to me.
I see. And when did he give you that?
He gave it to me a few minutes ago before I came back for my cigarette case. He is now waiting for me to use it. He is waiting at the corner. It depends upon you whether I shall use it or not.
What do you want from me, Rupert?
I want two things. two truths. I want the truth about this ticket here, and the truth about that chest, or rather its contents.
I can satisfy you on both. As for the ticket, I know nothing whatever about it. As for the chest, I simply do not know what you mean.
You have succeeded in satisfying me on neither.
Rupert, I've come to the conclusion that you are hopelessly drunk and that you'd better go home.
It is possible that I am drunk, but not hopelessly, and I am not going home.
What is all this about? What is all this maudlin suspiciousness?
This is not maudlin suspiciousness, Brandon. It is well-founded. From the first moment when I telephoned this house at 9:15 and heard over the wire your friend there crying for the dark, the suspicion was there, and that suspicion has been growing ever since.
Growing ever since? Growing ever since? What do you mean? What do you suspect?
I suspect murder, Brandon. The murder of Ronald Kentley.
Oh, my poor Rupert. You don't know how you've relieved me. I imagined you'd got onto the real truth, which would have been devilish awkward. Murder. Oh, dear, that's good. Hear that, Grano? He suspects us of murder. Murder. Isn't that too rich?
Is it possible that you are trying to bluff me?
Bluff you? Bluff you? Get on out of here. Blow your whistle, and bring the policeman in. Get on out. Do what you like.
Since you say I can do what I like, may I see the inside of that chest?
See the inside of that See the inside of that chest? You can see the inside of 50,000 chests. Get on out.
I did not ask to see the inside of 50,000 chests, Brandon, but to see the inside of this specific chest, and I cannot do that if I have to get on out.
You're drunk.
Possibly. Nevertheless, may I look inside that chest?
Yes.
Very well. I will.
Go on, then. What are you waiting for?
The key to the padlock, if you please.
Oh, the key. It's upstairs, I think.
Upstairs?
Yes, shall I go and get it?
No, don't do that. I can force it. Must I? Must I do this?
Here's your key. Now look and get what's coming to you.
Thank you.
You'll be sorry if you look in there, Goodell. You'll be sorry.
I'll take the risk. Oh. You swine. You dirty swine.
Now then, Rupert, sit down. I want to talk to you.
Poor Ronald Kentley, what had he done to you?
Sit down, Rupert. I want to talk to you.
Sit down, Brandon, what do you mean?
Sit down. For God's sake, sit down and listen. I want to explain.
Explain?
Oh, sit down. I'm at your mercy, I tell you. I'm at your mercy. Have mercy on me. I can explain. Have mercy on me. Sit down and judge me. Judge me.
Well?
Rupert, you're an enlightened man, aren't you?
I profess to be, yes.
And it is in your power to have me hanged.
So it seems.
And Granillo, too.
And Granillo, too.
Rupert,
Yes?
you remember our talk tonight about the Old Bailey and justice?
Yes, well?
And the difference between the two? You made the point.
Yes.
Yes. Well, remember that. You wouldn't be giving us up to justice. And now I want to ask you about something else you said. You do not rate life as a very precious thing, do you?
No.
Now listen, Rupert, listen. I have done this thing. I and Granillo, we've done it together. We have done it for adventure. For adventure and danger. For danger. You read Nietzsche, don't you, Rupert?
Yes.
And you know that he tells us to live dangerously.
Yes.
So we thought we would do so. That's all. We have done so. We have only done the thing. Others have talked. We have done. Do you understand?
Go on.
Listen, Rupert, listen. You're understanding. You're the one man to understand. Now, apart from all that, quite apart, even if you can't see how we look at it, you'll see that you can't give us up. 2 lives can't recall 1. It'd just be triple murder. You'd never allow that. And apart from that, too, our lives are in your hands. Your hands, man! I give them into your hands. You can't kill us. You can't kill. You're not a murderer, Rupert.
What are you?
We aren't. We aren't, I tell you. Don't tell me you're a slave to your period. You're an emancipated man. Rupert, you can't give us up. You know you can't. You can't. You can't. You can't. Can you?
Yes, I know. There's every truth in what you've said. This is a very queer, dark, and incomprehensible universe, and I understand it little. I myself have always tried to apply pure logic to it, and the application of logic can lead us into strange passes. It has done so in this case. I shall never trust logic again. You've said that I hold life cheap. You're right, I do. Your own included.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? I mean that you have taken and killed by strangulation a very harmless and helpless fellow creature of 20 years. I mean that in that chest there now lie the staring and futile remains of something that 4 hours ago lived and laughed and ran and found it good. Laughed as you could never laugh and ran as you could never run. I mean that for your cruel, scheming pleasure, you have committed a sin and a blasphemy against that very life which you now find yourselves so precious. And you've done more than this. You've not only killed him, you have rotted the lives of all those to whom he was dear. And in dragging his father round here tonight, you have played a lewd and infamous jest upon him, and a bad jest at that. And if you think, as your type of philosopher generally does, that all life is nothing but a bad jest, then you will now have the pleasure of seeing it played upon yourselves. It's not what I'm going to do, Brandon. It is what society is going to do. And what will happen to you at the hands of society, I'm not in a position to tell you. But I can give you a pretty shrewd guess, I think. You're going to hang. Hang. Both of you. Hang.
In Rope by Patrick Hamilton, Alan Rickman played Rupert Cadell and Adam Barham Wyndon Brandon. Andrew Branch was Charles Granello, and Christopher Good, Kenneth Raglan. Cyril Luckham played the part of Sir Johnston Kentley, and Moya Leslie, Leela Arden. Sabo was played by Olivier Pierre. The pianist was Mary Nash. The play was directed by John Tiedemann.
Rebecca.
Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again. I was aware of a change from before. The woods crowded dark and uncontrolled to the drive. When I saw the grey stones of Manderley shining in the moonlight of my dream, I could swear the house lived and breathed as it had done in the old days. But a cloud came over the moon, and the house reverted to what I knew it really was, a soulless, desolate sepulchre. Our fear and suffering lay in its ruins. There would be no resurrection. I wake up from my dream and lie here many hundreds of miles from England, in a bare little hotel bedroom, comforting for its lack of atmosphere. He and I travel constantly now, from one small hotel to another. And if we are sometimes bored, well, boredom can be a relief from fear. I won't tell him my dream, for Manderley is ours no longer. Manderley is no more. I remember how very different I was from the woman he depends on now. I was awkward and gauche, a silly little companion to Mrs. Van Hopper at Monte Carlo, all those years ago when I met him for the first time. Maxim de Winter was staying at the same hotel.
You know, I recognized you as soon as you walked into the restaurant this morning, Mr. De Winter. I thought, why, there's Billy's friend, Mr. De Winter. I simply must show him those snaps of Billy and Dora taken on their honeymoon. I sent her up to get them at once. Here they are.
Oh.
There's Dora. Isn't she simply adorable? Billy's crazy about her. He hadn't met her when he gave that party at Claridge's, where I saw you first. But I dare say you don't remember an old woman like me.
On the contrary, I remember you very well. I have to say, I don't think I'd like Palm Beach all that much.
If Billy had a home like your Manderley, I don't suppose he'd play around in Palm Beach. I'm told it's like fairyland. I haven't been there, of course, but I've seen pictures of it. I wonder you can ever bear to leave it. Of course, you Englishmen are always so modest about your homes, so deprecating. He won't admit it, my dear, but I believe Mandel has been in his family's possession since the conquest. I suppose your family often entertained royally there, Mr. De Winter.
Not since Ethelred.
Ethelred?
The one who was called the Unready. In fact, it was while staying with my family that the name was given him. He was invariably late for dinner.
Oh, really? I'd no idea. How interesting.
And what do you think of Monte Carlo? Or don't you think of it at all?
I think it's all a bit artificial.
She's spoiled, Mr. De Winter. That's her trouble. Most girls would give their eyes for the chance of seeing Monte.
Wouldn't that rather defeat the purpose?
I'm faithful to Monte. My constitution won't take the English winter. What brings you here? Did you bring your golf clubs?
I came away in rather a hurry.
The West Country must be delightful in the spring.
Yes, Mandalay was looking its best.
I was too young. That was the trouble. Had I been older, I would have realized that he was making some kind of bond with me through his remarks to Mrs. Van Hopper. As it was, I blushed with shame and embarrassment. Even Mrs. Van Hopper noticed and commented upon what seemed his almost rudely abrupt departure. But later, I received a note delivered by the lift boy.
Forgive me. I was very rude this afternoon.
No signature, no beginning. The boy asked if there was any answer, and I said no. As fate would have it, Mrs. Van Hopper fell ill with flu and took to her bed, pampering herself by hiring a full-time nurse, who largely relieved me of my responsibilities. I found myself alone at lunch. Stupidly, I knocked over the vase of flowers on the table. In a second, someone was by my side. Oh!
You can't sit at a wet tablecloth. It'll put you off your feet.
I don't mind. It doesn't matter a bit. I'm all alone.
Come and have luncheon with me.
Oh, no, I couldn't possibly.
Why not?
Please, don't be polite. It'll be perfectly all right if the waiter just wipes the cloth.
But I'm not being polite. I want you to have lunch with me. Even if you hadn't knocked over that vase so clumsily, I should have asked you. You don't believe me. Never mind. Come and sit down. We needn't talk to each other unless we feel like it. You got my note, I suppose. I felt very much ashamed of myself. My manners were atrocious. The only excuse I have is that I've become boorish through living alone. That's why it's so kind of you to have lunch with me today.
You weren't rude. At least not the sort of rudeness she would understand. That curiosity of hers, she doesn't mean to be offensive. She does it to everyone. That is, everyone of importance.
I ought to be flattered, then. And why should she consider me of importance?
I think because of Manderley.
They say he can't get over his wife's death, Rebecca. An appalling tragedy. He never talks about it, never mentions her name. She was drowned, you know, in the bay near the house.
My mornings were now largely free. Maxim de Winter took to driving me round on little excursions. If he had driven me round in circles, it wouldn't have mattered to me. In his very nearness, I was beginning to liberate myself from the dreary life of a lady's companion. You'll think me impertinent and rude, I dare say, but I would like to know why you asked me to come out in the car day after day. You're being kind, that's obvious, but why do you choose me for your charity? You know everything there is to know about me, but I know nothing more about you than I did the first day we met.
And what did you know then?
Why, that you lived at Manderley, and that you had lost your wife.
You would like, you once told me at a chosen moment, to live the past again. I'm afraid I think rather differently from you. Something happened a year ago that altered my whole life, and I want to forget every phase in my existence up to that time. Those days are finished. You have blotted out the past for me, you know, far more effectively than all the bright lights of Monte Carlo. Damn your idea of my kindness and my charity. I ask you to come with me because I want you and your company. And if you don't believe me, you can leave the car now and find your own way home. Go on, open the door and get out.
I want to go home.
Oh, to hell with all this. I suppose you are young enough to be my daughter, and I don't know how to deal with you. You can forget all I've said. That's all finished and done with. Don't let's ever think of it again. My family always called me Maxim. I'd like you to do the same. You've been formal with me long enough.
I never saw Rebecca, but I believe she was very lovely. They used to give tremendous parties at Manderley. It was all very sudden and tragic.
His wife, Rebecca. I had a book in my hands, a book of poems he had given me to read, and on the first white page was written, Max, from Rebecca. A careless, easy hand in long, slanting strokes. She called him Max, familiar, easy on the tongue. And just now he had told me I could call him Maxim.
My daughter Helen is sailing for New York on Saturday. They've cabled her to return home. Little Nancy has a threatened appendix. That's decided me. We're going too. I'm tired to death of Europe. How do you like the idea of seeing New York?
I should say goodbye to him in the lounge, perhaps, a furtive, scrambled farewell while Mrs. Van Hopper monopolised the leave-taking. And as she went on and on about writing and so forth, he would light a cigarette, and I would think, 4.5 minutes to go, and I shall never see him again. I know I cried all that night, bitter, youthful tears that couldn't come from me today. You don't sob deeply into a pillow after the age of 21. The next morning I ran to his room.
So, Mrs. Van Hopper has had enough of Monte Carlo, and now she wants to go home. So do I. She to New York, and I to Manderley. Which would you prefer? You can take your choice.
What?
Take your choice.
Don't make a joke about it. It's unfair. And I think I'd better see about those tickets and say goodbye now.
If you think I'm one of those people who try to be funny at breakfast, you're wrong. I'm invariably ill-tempered in the early morning. I repeat to you once more, the choice is open to you. Either you go to America with Mrs. Van Hopper, or you come to Manderley with me.
You mean you want a secretary or something?
No. I'm asking you to marry me, you little fool.
I'm not the sort of person men marry.
What the devil do you mean by that?
I don't think I know how to explain. I don't belong to your sort of world, for one thing.
Well, what is my world?
Well, Manderley?
You think I asked you this on the spur of the moment, don't you? You think I asked you to marry me for the same reason you believed I drove you about and took you to dinner, to be kind, don't you?
Yes.
One day you'll realize that philanthropy is not my strongest quality. At the moment, I don't think you realize anything at all. You haven't answered my question. Are you going to marry me? My suggestion doesn't seem to have gone too well. I'm sorry. I rather thought you loved me. A fine blow to my conceit.
I do love you. I've been crying all night because I thought I should never see you again.
Oh, bless you for that. It's a pity you have to grow up.
He hadn't asked Rebecca to marry him in this way. Max, from Rebecca. Later, I opened the book of poems to that white page. She was dead. One must not have thoughts about the dead. They slept in peace. The grass blew over their graves. I cut the page right out of the book. The book looked white and clean when the page was gone. But I had to get up and look at the torn fragments of the cut-out page in the wastebasket. Even now the ink was thick and black. The writing was not destroyed. I took a match and set light to the fragments. The fire burned them to feathery dust.
I suppose I've got to hand it to you. You're a fast worker. Still waters can certainly run deep in your case. You realize he's years older than you.
He's only 42.
Of course, you know why he's marrying you, don't you? You haven't flattered yourself he's in love with you. The fact is, that empty house got on his nerves to such an extent he nearly went off his head. He just can't go on living there alone.
Maxim, just look at those rhododendrons.
Like them?
It's all so beautiful.
Here, straighten your fur. I should have given you time to buy a few decent clothes when we stopped over in London.
It doesn't matter as long as you don't mind. Who are all those people?
Oh, damn that woman. She knows perfectly well I didn't want this sort of thing. I'm afraid you'll have to face it. Mrs. Danvers has collected the whole staff from the house and estate to welcome us. Oh, it's all right. You won't have to say anything. I'll do it all. Here's Frith. You'd call him the faithful old retainer. Hello, Frith. Everything well?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Welcome home, and hope you've been keeping well, sir, and madam.
Oh, we're all right, but we're tired and we want our tea. I didn't expect this business.
Mrs. Danvers' orders, sir.
Ranged one behind the other in the hall, overflowing to the stone passages beyond, a sea of faces, open-mouthed and curious, gazing at me as though it were my execution. Someone tall and gaunt advanced, dressed in deep black, whose prominent cheekbones and hollow eyes gave her a skull's face, parchment white, set on a skeleton's frame.
This is Mrs. Danvers.
Welcome to Mandalay, madam. I speak for myself and on behalf of the staff.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I will introduce you to each member of the household. Your gloves.
What?
You dropped your gloves.
Oh.
Allow me, madam. There.
Thank you, Mrs. Danvers.
Mrs. Danvers wondered, madam, whether you'd like to see your room when you've finished your tea.
Oh.
What sort of job have they made of the East Wing, Frith?
Oh, very nice indeed, sir. Mrs. Danvers was afraid the workmen wouldn't be finished before you arrived, sir.
Oh.
Have you been making alterations?
Oh, bit of redecorating. I thought we'd use the suite in the East Wing. Much more cheerful on that side of the house. A good view of the rose garden. It was the visitors' wing when my mother was alive. Run along and make friends with Mrs. Danvers. It's a good opportunity.
What was this room like before?
Oh, it had a mauve paper and different hangings. Mr. de Winter did not think it very cheerful. It was never much used, but he gave special orders in his letters that you would have this room.
Then it wasn't his bedroom originally?
Oh, no, madam.
I suppose you've been at Mandalay longer than anyone else.
Not as long as Frith. He was here when Mr. de Winter was a boy.
You didn't come till after that?
No, not till after that. I came here when the first Mrs. de Winter was a bride.
Mrs. Danvers, I hope we shall become friends, and I want us to understand one another. This kind of life is new to me, and all I want to do is make Mr. de Winter happy. I know I can leave all the household arrangements to you, and you must run things as you always have.
Whatever you say. Of course, it was different when Mrs. De Winter was alive. There was a lot of entertaining then, and she liked to supervise things herself.
I would rather leave it all to you, much rather.
Can I do anything more for you now?
No, I think I have everything. You've made the room so charming.
I only followed Mr. De Winter's instructions. He said you would prefer to be on this side. The rooms in the West Wing are very old. The bedroom there is twice as big as this one. It's the most beautiful room in the house. And the windows look down across the lawns to the sea.
I suppose Mr. De Winter keeps the most beautiful rooms to show to the public.
The bedrooms are never shown to the public. They used to live in the West Wing and use those rooms when Mrs. De Winter was alive. The big bedroom I was telling you about was Mrs. De Winter's bedroom.
I see.
You could never tell you were within 5 minutes of the sea from this wing, could you?
The next day, I made my way down to the morning room. It was a woman's room, graceful, fragile. The room of someone who had chosen each article of furniture with great care, so that everything was in perfect harmony with her own personality. This I will have, and this, I could hear her saying, taking piece by piece from Manderley's treasures, each object that pleased her best, with a sure instinct for only the most exquisite. And everywhere, fresh rhododendrons, flowing into the room from their natural home in the gardens outside, on the mantelpiece, on the table by the sofa, and on the writing desk beside the golden candlesticks. Oh. Who is it?
Mrs. De Winter.
Who do you want?
Mrs. De Winter.
I'm afraid you've made a mistake. Mrs. De Winter has been dead for over a year.
It's Mrs. Danvers, madam. I'm speaking to you on the house telephone.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Danvers. I didn't even know we had one.
I was wondering if you approved of the menus for today.
Oh, I'm sure I do.
It would be better, I think, if you read the list. You'll find the menu of the day on the blotter beside you.
What? This? Oh, yes. Very suitable indeed.
You'll notice I left a blank space beside the sauce. I'm not sure which sauce you're used to with the roast veal.
Oh, well, let me see. I hardly know. I think we'd better have what you usually have, whatever you think Mrs. De Winter would have ordered.
I rather think Mrs. De Winter would have ordered a wine sauce, madam.
We'll have the same, then.
I'm very sorry I disturbed you while you were writing, madam.
I heard the sound of a car in the drive at 12. I knew it would be Maxim's sister Beatrice and her husband Giles coming to inspect me. My courage caved in, and I thought I would head for my bedroom where I would wait for a suitable moment before going down. But I must have lost my bearings, for passing through a door at the head of the stairs, I came to a long corridor I hadn't seen before, and to another staircase. I opened a door and found a room in total darkness. Dimly I could see the outline of furniture swathed in dust sheets. I shut the door softly, and walking in the corridor again, I realized I was in the West Wing. I came to a little alcove where a broad window looked out directly onto the lawns and the sea. Oh!
Madam.
Mrs. Danvers. I was looking for my bedroom.
You've come into the opposite side of the house. Did you go into any of the rooms?
I just opened the door of one of them.
If you wish to open up the rooms, I'll have it done. Any time when you've nothing to do, you have only to ask me, and I'll show you the rooms in the West Wing. I'll have the dust sheets removed, and you can see the rooms as they looked when they were used. It would take only a short while to have the rooms in readiness.
It's very kind of you. Now I think I must greet the Lacys. I heard their car just now.
You know your way, don't you?
Maxim always dumped the bachelors into this room. Well, it's charming, I must say. Looks out over the rose garden, which was always an advantage. Now we've got the men out of the way, may I powder my nose?
Of course, Beatrice.
Oh, Danvers, do this up for you.
Yes, I think she's done it very well.
These are nice brushes. Wedding present.
Maxim gave them to me.
My brother has some taste. But then he was educated into it, wasn't he? Do you suppose you'll be having lots of people down?
I don't know. Maxim hasn't said.
Funny old boy. One never knows with him. One time the place was always chock-a-block. Somehow I can't see you... Oh, well, never mind. Pity you don't ride or shoot. You miss such a lot. You don't sail by any chance, do you?
No.
Thank God for that. Come and see us if you like. I always expect people to ask themselves. Life's too short to send out invitations.
Thank you very much.
Forgive me if I've said a lot of rude things. Tact was never my strong point, as Maxim will tell you. I have to say, you're not a bit what I expected. You see, you're so very different from Rebecca.
Maxim, do you like my hair?
Your hair? Of course I like it. It's a bit wet, of course. Sorry about that. And I had to take a walk after seeing Beatrice, rain or no rain. I find a little of my family goes a long way.
She was nice. She said I was quite different from what she expected.
And what the devil did she expect?
Someone much smarter, more sophisticated, I guess.
Beatrice can sometimes be infernally unintelligent.
I loved walking through Happy Valley just now. It's exactly how you described it to me in Monte Carlo.
It's a bit of a contrast to this cove. Comes on you as a shock, doesn't it? Jasper? Jasper, where are you?
Perhaps he's gone back to the Happy Valley.
Well, he was by that rock a minute ago, sniffing a dead seagull. Come back! We don't want to go that way. Oh, the dog can look after himself.
Perhaps he's fallen, poor little chap.
No, he's all right. He knows his own way back.
Jasper! Jasper, come here. Hello.
I know that dog. He comes from the house.
Yes.
He's not yourn.
He's Mr. De Winter's dog. I want to take him back to the house. Then the man looked at me and smiled, toothlessly and none too intelligently. He had been digging for shells. I wondered if there were any string to use as a lead for Jasper in the nearby boathouse, and I walked towards it. I expected to find the usual dirty boat store, and it was dirty, all right. But it was done up like a cottage, with furniture, cups, plates, and bookshelves. There was a queer, musty smell about the place. The rain pattered on the roof with a hollow sound and tapped on the boarded-up windows. I looked about for some string, but there was none anywhere. I saw a door at one end of this room, and I went to it and opened it. A little fearful now, a little afraid. For I had the odd, uneasy feeling that I might come upon something unawares. Something I had no wish to see, something that might harm me. But it was nonsense. I knew it was. I opened the door, and there was the boat store after all. Before long, I had cut off a piece of string from a ball of twine and returned to the beach. There. That's got you now, Jasper.
I'm sorry, go in there now.
Yes, it's all right. Mr. De Winter won't mind.
She don't go in there now.
No, not now.
She's gone in the sea, ain't she? She won't come back no more.
No, she'll not come back.
I never said nothing, did I?
No, of course not. Don't worry. Come on, Jasper. Oh, sorry I was such a time, Maxim. It was Jasper's fault. He kept barking at that man. Who was he?
Oh, only Ben. He's quite harmless, poor devil. His family lived near the home farm. Where did you get that string?
In the boathouse on the beach.
Was the door open?
Yes. I found the string in the back room.
Oh. Now, the boathouse is meant to be locked. Did Ben tell you it was open?
No, he didn't seem to understand anything I said.
No, he makes out he's worse than he is. He's probably in and out of it all the time.
I don't think so. It looked completely deserted. The damps got into everything. The books are spoilt, the chairs and that sofa.
Come on, Jasper, for God's sake. Pull him along a bit. Make him keep up with us.
It's your fault. You walk so fast. We can't keep up.
If you'd listened to me instead of rushing off over the rocks, we'd be home by now.
I thought Jasper might have fallen. I was afraid of the tide.
Do you think I'd have left the dog there if it had been any question of the tide? I told you not to go, and now you're grumbling because you're tired.
I'm not grumbling, but anyone would have trouble keeping up with this pace. I thought you were going to come with me to find Jasper anyhow.
Why should I exhaust myself careering about after the damned dog?
You're exhausting yourself plenty right now. You're just saying that about Jasper as an excuse.
Excuse? Why should I want an excuse for not coming with you to the beach?
Oh, Maxim, how should I know? You just didn't want to, that's all. I could see it in your face.
See what in my face?
I've already told you. Oh, let's drop the subject, please.
All right, I didn't want to go to the beach. Will that please you? I never go near the bloody place and that damned boathouse. And if you had my memories, you wouldn't want to go there either. Or talk about it, or even think about it.
Maxim, please. I don't want you to look like that. Let's forget what we've said. Please let everything be all right.
We ought to have stayed abroad. We ought never to have come back to Mandalay. Oh, God, what a fool I was to come back!
The rain and the gloom settled on us for some days. A misery broken for me only by the arrival of my wedding present from Beatrice. A history of painting in 4 big volumes. Dear Beatrice. She knew my one claim to a hobby was sketching, and she herself probably never opened a book from one year to the next. I arranged them in a row on the writing desk, but one of them fell, and in doing so knocked a little china cupid onto the floor, smashing it to pieces. I felt like a guilty child, swept up the fragments, and hid them in an envelope at the back of one of the drawers of the writing desk.
That cupid was worth a hell of a lot. Mrs. Danvers has accused Robert the footman of purloining it. Doesn't seem to be any other reason for it to be missing. God, I hate these servants' complications.
Darling, I meant to tell you before. I broke the cupid yesterday.
Why didn't you say so? Now you'll have to explain the whole business to her.
Oh, please, Maxim, you tell her. I'm so afraid of what you...
Oh, it was all a mistake, Mrs. Danvers. My wife broke the cupid and forgot to say anything.
I'm very sorry if Robert's got into trouble.
Is it possible to repair it?
I'm afraid not. It's smashed into little pieces.
What did you do with the pieces?
I put them in an envelope.
Well, what did you do with the envelope?
I put it at the back of one of the drawers in the writing desk.
Well, it looks as though Mrs. De Winter thought you had put her in prison, doesn't it, Mrs. Danvers? Perhaps you'd find the envelope and send the pieces up to London. If it's too far gone, there's nothing for it. And tell Robert to dry his tears.
I'll apologise to Robert, of course. Perhaps if such a thing should happen again, Mrs. De Winter would tell me herself. It will save everybody a lot of unpleasantness.
Quite. Thank you, Mrs. Danvers.
I'm sorry, darling.
Oh, my dear child, what does it matter? I wonder if I did a very selfish thing in marrying you.
What do you mean?
Well, are you happy here? I'm not much of a companion to you at my age.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Of course we're companions, and I am happy. I love Mandalay, and everything about it. You were right to come back. You don't really think we made a mistake, do you, Maxim? You know our marriage is a wonderful success.
How can I answer you? If you say we're happy, then we must be. Agreed? Agreed.
The smashed cupid had been a wedding present for Rebecca. "Oh, look, Max, look what we've been sent," she would have said as she plunged her hands into the box of shavings. "We'll have it in the morning room." And he must have knelt down beside her, and they must have looked at the little cupid together. I felt oddly free when Maxim went overnight to London on business, curiously happy. I took Jasper for walks on our own. I swam in the sea. I was drawn to the boathouse again and went inside, only to surprise Ben stealing a fishing line from the boat store. He was terrified, like a child, and I tried to calm him by saying we would keep it a secret. He gave me a shell he'd collected as a present.
That's yourn.
Thank you. It's very pretty.
You got angel's eyes. Not like the other one. Tall and dark she was. She gave you the feeling of a snake. I seen her here with my own eyes. Be night she'd come. I looked in once. She turned on me. She said, "You don't know me, do you? You never see me here, and you won't any more. If I catch you looking in the windows again, I'll have you put in the asylum." She's gone now, isn't she?
No one's going to put you in the asylum, Ben. The feeling of a snake? As I was walking back to the house, I saw a stranger's car in the drive, a long, low sports car. I glanced up at the west wing and saw to my surprise that the shutters of one of the windows were open. A man was standing there. He must have seen me, for he drew back suddenly, and an arm in a black sleeve reached up to close the shutters. That arm surely belonged to Mrs. Danvers.
I expect she's gone to the library. She's come home early for some reason. If she's there, you'll be able to go through the hall without her seeing you.
Oh. I beg your pardon. I hope I didn't startle you.
Of course not. I wasn't expecting callers, that's all.
What a shame. Actually, I popped down to look up old Danny. She was most anxious not to disturb you.
It doesn't matter in the least.
And, how's old Max?
Maxim? Very well. He's gone up to London.
And left the bride all alone, huh? Ah, hello, Danny. All your precautions were in vain. The mistress of the house was hiding in here. Well, aren't you going to introduce me?
This is Mr. Favell, madam.
Well, I suppose if I'm not going to be invited to tea, I'd better be on my way. Come and have a look at my car. Why don't you? Much faster than anything Max has. What do you say?
Where? Where is the car?
Just in the drive. You coming too, Danny?
No, I won't. Goodbye, Mr. Jack.
There. What do you think of it?
Very nice.
Come for a ride to the lodge gates.
No, I don't think I will. I'm rather tired.
Oh, well. Mustn't lead the bride astray. I wish I'd got a bride waiting for me at home. I'm just a poor, lonesome old bachelor. By the way, it would be extremely sporting of you if you didn't mention this little visit of mine to Max. He doesn't exactly approve of me, I'm afraid. Can't think why not. Anyhow, it might get old Danny into trouble. Comprenez?
Yes, all right.
Very well.
I wondered what Mrs. Danvers and a man like Jack Favell had to do with one another. Or was he something to do with Rebecca? It seemed impossible. So why were he and Mrs. Danvers in the West Wing? Why had they closed the shutters when they saw me approach the house? I had this strange impulse now to creep upstairs to the West Wing and see these rooms for myself. Yes, her room, this room. But where were the dust sheets? They were gone. The room was alive again. The bed made up, fresh flowers. A satin dressing gown lay on a chair and a pair of slippers beneath. In a minute, Rebecca herself would come back into the room, sit down before the looking-glass humming a tune, reach for her comb and run it through her hair. It was the most beautiful room in the house. All the things in it I would have loved and almost worshipped if they had been mine. But I knew they were not mine. They belonged to somebody else.
Would you like to touch her nightdress again? Feel it. Hold it. How soft and light it is, isn't it? I did everything for her, you know. I won't have anyone but you, Danny, she used to say. Put her dressing gown up against you. Oh, yes, she was taller than you. Much taller. But you can still smell the scent from the wardrobe, can't you? You always knew when she'd just been in a room from the whiff of her scent. She was wearing slacks and a shirt when she died. They were torn from her body in the water, though. Her beautiful face was unrecognizable. Mr. De Winter identified her. He went to Edgecombe to do it. No one could stop him. I shall always blame myself for the accident. I'd gone to Kerry for the afternoon and stayed late, as Mrs. De Winter was in London and wasn't expected back until much later. When I returned here at 9:30, I was told she'd been and gone. It was brewing up for a storm. I was so worried I went to Mr. De Winter after his own return from an evening out. He told me she was probably spending the night at the boathouse on the beach. I couldn't sleep. I kept wondering what she was doing. And the next day, one of the life buoys was washed up of Kerrith. Bits and pieces of rigging came in with the tide. You know now why Mr. De Winter doesn't use these rooms anymore, don't you? Listen to the sea. Sometimes I seem to catch the sound of her dress sweeping the stairs as she comes down to dinner. Do you think she can see us talking now? Do you think the dead come back and watch the living?
I don't know, Mrs. Danvers.
Sometimes I wonder if she comes back here to Manderley and watches you and Mr. De Winter together.
I asked myself why Mrs. Danvers had become more confidential towards me, and whether this had anything to do with the fact that I discovered her with Jack Favell. But now a new event was about to unfold, initiated, oddly enough, by one of our more tiresome social acquaintances whom we were obliged to entertain from time to time, Lady Crowan.
Oh, Mr. De Winter, there's something I've been meaning to ask you for ages. Tell me, is there any chance of you reviving the Manderley Fancy Dress Ball?
I could tell Maxim plainly hated the idea, yet I couldn't say no to it. When I said I'd quite like a ball, that decided it as far as he was concerned.
It's the first ball since Mrs. De Winter was alive. I wonder Mr. De Winter doesn't make it a period ball, everyone dressed more or less the same, to be in keeping. I never think it looks right to see a clown in patches dancing with an elegant lady. Have you decided what to wear?
No, I haven't.
Well, I wonder you don't copy one of the portraits in the gallery. The girl in white. A Rayburn. Portrait of Caroline De Winter, a sister of Mr. De Winter's great-great-grandfather. A famous London beauty for many years. The dress would be easy to copy. Those puffed sleeves, the flounce, the little bodice. It must be a surprise. I won't give you away. We all have our little secrets from time to time, don't we?
I'm getting dress fever already. What fun it all is. I'm so glad you decided to do this again, Maxim.
You've got my wife to thank for it.
It wasn't me. Lady Crowan suggested it.
The local gentry must have their ball at Manderley.
I'm longing to see your dress.
Oh, it's nothing, really, it isn't.
She says none of us will know her.
Oh, what's the time? I wonder if we ought to be thinking of getting ready.
Fairy lights, a band, catering. Manderley's come alive again, Maxim.
It's a dress fit for the Queen of England.
What about under the left shoulder, there? That strap of mine, is it going to show?
No, madam. No, nothing shows.
How is it? How do I look?
Oh.
Give me the wig. Careful, don't crush it.
I'll brush your hair first.
Oh, Clarice, what will Mr. De Winter say? Who's there? You can't come in.
It's me, Beatrice, my dear. How far have you got? I want to look at it.
No, you can't come in. I'm not ready. I'll be down soon. Don't wait for me, all of you, and tell Maxim he can't come in.
Oh, Maxim's down already. He said he hammered on your bathroom door and you never answered. Now, don't be too long, my dear. We're all so intrigued.
Well, Clarice, how do I look?
Beautiful, madam. Like Cinderella.
Or like Caroline de Winter. Would you make the drummer announce me, please? And then call out, Miss Caroline de Winter.
Miss Caroline de Winter.
do you do, Mr. De Winter?
What the hell do you think you're doing?
It's the picture. It's the picture, the one in the gallery. What is it? What have I done?
Go and change. It doesn't matter what you put on. Find an ordinary evening frock. Anything will do. Go now, before anyone else comes. Well, what are you standing there for? Didn't you hear what I said?
Of course, I knew at once it was a terrible mistake. But then you couldn't possibly have known.
Known what?
Why, the dress, you poor dear. It was what Rebecca did at the last fancy dress ball at Manderley. Identical. No. The same picture, the same dress. When you were announced standing on the stairs for one ghastly moment, I thought...
I ought to have known.
Oh, nonsense. How could you? Only Maxim...
What about Maxim?
He thinks you did it deliberately.
No.
Oh, you had some bet you could startle him, didn't you? Well, only a foolish joke, and of course he doesn't understand.
What am I going to do? How am I going to tell him?
I'll do that. I'll get him alone for a minute and explain the whole thing. Meanwhile, you must get ready to go down.
No, I'm not coming down.
But you must, dear. For Maxim's sake as well as your own. What will he do without his hostess? Would you like some brandy? I know it's only Dutch courage, but sometimes it helps.
No, I don't want anything.
I shall have to go down. They're about to have dinner. Don't leave it too late, dear. Everything will come out all right in the end. Are you sure it's safe to leave you?
Yes. And thank you, Beatrice. Mrs. Danvers.
Yes. What is it?
Mrs. Danvers.
The day started off well, but now the fog is closing in from the sea. I left the menu on the desk. Do you want something changed?
You've done what you wanted, haven't you? Are you pleased now? After what happened last night?
Why did you ever come here? Nobody wanted you at Manderley. Why didn't you stay in France?
You seem to forget that I love Mr. De Winter.
If you loved him, you'd never have married him.
What?
I thought I hated you. I don't now. It seems to have spent itself, all the feeling I had.
Why should you hate me?
You tried to take Mrs. De Winter's place.
You set yourself against me from the first. Why? Many people marry twice. Haven't we as much right to be happy as anyone else?
Happy? Mr. De Winter isn't happy. Any fool can see that.
It's not true. He was happy when we were in France.
Well, he's a man, isn't he? No man denies himself on his honeymoon.
How dare you speak to me like that? You made me wear that dress because you wanted him to suffer. Why? Hasn't he suffered enough? Do you think all his agony and pain will bring Mrs. De Winter back again?
Well, what do I care for his suffering? He never cared about mine.
Mrs. Danvers.
How do you think I've liked it? Watching you sit in her place, walk in her footsteps, touch the things that were hers. Listen while the servants call you Mrs. De Winter. Mrs. De Winter has gone out for a walk, or Mrs. De Winter won't be into tea until 5 o'clock. And all the while, my Mrs. De Winter lies cold in her grave. Oh, she didn't care. She wasn't afraid. She had the spirit of a boy. She ought to have been a boy. I had the care of her as a child. You knew that, didn't you?
What's the use of all this? I don't want to hear any more.
Yes, you couldn't beat her for spirit. She cared for nothing and no one. And then she was beaten in the end. But it wasn't a man. It wasn't a woman. It was the sea that got her. It was the sea was too strong for her. The sea got her in the end.
Mrs. Danvers, you're ill. Why don't you go to bed and rest?
Oh, leave me alone. What's it to you if I show my grief? I'm not ashamed of it. I don't shut myself up in my room to cry, pacing up and down all night, like Mr. De Winter.
He doesn't do that.
He did, after she died. Up and down in the library. I watched him through the keyhole. He was like a caged animal.
I don't want to hear.
And then you say you made him happy on his honeymoon. I wonder what Mr. De Winter thought when his precious honeymoon was over and he had you back here at Manderley with all the servants laughing at you.
You'd better go to your room.
The mistress of the house thinks I'd better go to my room. And after that, what? Will she go running to Mr. De Winter, saying Mrs. Danvers has been unkind to her, like she ran to him and told him about Mr. Jack's visit?
I never told him Mr. Favell had been here.
That's a lie. Who else told him? Oh, well, what do I care? Mr. Jack is her cousin. It's my last link with my lady. I'll see him if I please. But your Mr. De Winter has forbidden him the house. He hasn't forgotten to be jealous, has he?
What do you mean?
He was jealous while she lived, and now he's jealous when she's dead. He still forbids Mr. Jack the house. That shows you he hasn't forgotten her, doesn't it? Of course he was jealous, and so was I, and so was everyone that knew her. Men were mad for her, all of them. But she didn't care, she only laughed. She'd have them down for the weekends to stay, men she'd met in London. Picnic suppers in the boathouse she'd turned into a cottage. They were all mad for her, and they'll never forget her.
I don't want to know.
It's no use, is it? You'll never get the better of her. She's still mistress here, even if she is dead. She's the real Mrs. De Winter, not you. It's you that's the ghost. It's you that's forgotten and not wanted and pushed aside. Well, why don't you leave Manderley to her? Why don't you go? Yes, why not? We none of us want you. He doesn't want you, he never did. He wants to be left alone in the house with her. It's you that ought to be lying in the church crypt, not her. Now look down there. You can hardly see the sea for fog, can you? It's so easy, isn't it? Why don't you jump? Wouldn't hurt. Be over in an instant on those rocks. Not like drowning. Why don't you try it? Why don't you go? I won't push you, don't be afraid of that. You can jump of your own accord. What's the use of staying here at Manderley? Mr. De Winter doesn't love you, you can see that. You haven't any other life to go to either, so there's not much to live for, is there? Why don't you jump now and have done with it? Then you won't be unhappy anymore. Go on. Go on. Don't be afraid.
What was that?
It's the rockets. There must be a ship gone ashore out there in the bay.
Frith! Frith!
Yes, Mr. De Winter?
She's ashore, all right. I was watching her for the headland and I saw her go for the reef. She must have mistaken the bay for Kerrith Harbour. They'll never shift her. Not with these tides. Tell them in the house to stand by with food and drink. I'm going back down to the cove to see if I can do anything. And give me some cigarettes, will you?
Captain Searle, the harbour master, would like to see you, madam.
See me? But surely it's Mr. De Winter he'll be wanting.
He did say he wanted to see Mr. De Winter personally, but when I said he wasn't here, Captain Searle asked to see you instead, madam.
Well, yes, of course. Send him in.
Mrs. De Winter?
Come in, Captain Searle. I'm sorry my husband isn't back yet. He must have gone down to the cliffs again. And he was in Kerrith before that. I haven't seen him all day.
Yes, I'd heard he'd been to Kerrith, but I missed him there. He must have walked back across the cliffs while I was in my boat.
Oh, do sit down.
Go.
I'm afraid the ship has disorganised everybody. Was it to do with that?
No, ma'am. It's not the ship that brought me here. Not directly. The fact is, I've got some news for Mr. De Winter, and, well, I hardly know how to break it to him.
What sort of news?
A couple of hours ago, we sent a diver down to inspect the hole in the ship's bottom. While he was down there, he came across the hull of a little sailing boat, lying on her side, quite intact and not broken up at all. He's a local man, and he recognised the boat at once. It was the little boat belonging to the late Mrs. De Winter.
I see. Would anything have to be done about it?
Not in the ordinary way, ma'am, no. Mrs. De Winter, the last thing I want to do is cause you or Mr. De Winter any distress. But the boat itself wasn't all the diver discovered. He broke one of the ports with a stone to have a look inside the cabin. It was full of water, of course. And then he got the fright of his life, Mrs. De Winter. There was a body in there, lying on the cabin floor. It was dissolved, of course, no flesh on it, so it's unrecognisable. When he came up to the surface, he reported it direct to me, and now you understand why I've got to see your husband.
She was supposed to be sailing alone. Does this mean there was someone with her all the time and no one ever knew?
It looks like it.
Who could it have been?
I can't tell any more than you. Anyhow, I'm afraid it'll have to be reported.
Oh.
It's very hard on you, coming now just when you're settling in.
If only we didn't have to tell him.
You know I wouldn't if it were possible, ma'am, but I've got to do my duty.
Hello, what's happening? I didn't know you were here, Captain Searle. Is anything the matter?
My old cowardice came over me. I couldn't stand to be in the room and rushed out without looking at Maxim. Later, while on the terrace, I heard Captain Searle's car start up in the drive. His business finished. I returned to the library, knowing what he had told Maxim. If I failed now, I should fail forever. There would never be another chance. Maxim, I don't want you to bear this alone. I want to share it with you. I've grown up in 24 hours. I'll never be a child again. You've forgiven me, haven't you?
Forgiven you? What have I got to forgive you for?
For last night.
Oh, that. I'd forgotten.
Can't we start all over again? Can't we begin from today and face things together? I won't ask you to love me. I won't ask the impossible. I'll be your companion. I won't demand anything more than that.
How much do you love me? No, it's too late, my darling, too late. We've lost our little chance of happiness.
No!
Yes, it's over now. The thing has happened.
What thing?
The thing I always foresaw. The thing I've dreamt about. You and I aren't meant for happiness.
What are you trying to tell me?
Rebecca has won.
What?
A shadow between us all the time. How could I hold you like this with the fear always in my heart that this would happen? She knew it would happen. She knew she'd win in the end.
Maxim, you must tell me.
Rebecca's boat. They found it this afternoon.
I know. And the body. It means she wasn't alone, doesn't it? That's it, isn't it, Maxim? There was someone with her who didn't drift away from the boat.
No. You don't understand. There was no one with Rebecca. She was alone. It's Rebecca's body lying on the cabin floor.
No.
The woman buried in the crypt is not Rebecca. It's the body of some unknown woman. There never was an accident. Rebecca was not drowned at all. I killed her. I shot Rebecca in the boathouse in the cove. I carried her body to the boat and sunk it in the bay. I killed Rebecca. Will you look into my eyes now and tell me that you love me?
Little by little, the feeling will come back to me. At the moment, I am nothing. I am just a wooden thing in Maxim's arms. Then he begins to kiss me. He has never kissed me like this before. I put my hands behind his head and shut my eyes.
I love you so much. So much. So much. No. You don't love me. We'll forget that. It won't happen again.
Maxim, I love you more than anything in the world. But when you told me just then, I was stunned. I couldn't feel anything then.
You don't love me. That's why you couldn't feel anything.
Kiss me again, Maxim.
No, it's no use now.
We can't lose each other, not now. We've got to be together always with no secrets. Please, darling, please.
There's no time. We may have only a few hours left. They'll identify her body. There's everything to tell them. The clothes, the shoes, the rings on her fingers. And then they'll remember the woman in the crypt.
What are you going to do?
I don't know. I don't know.
Does anyone know? Anyone at all?
No.
No one but you and me.
No one but you and me.
Why didn't you tell me?
I couldn't bring myself to. I thought you were unhappy. Bored. You never seemed to want to come to me of your own free will.
How could I? When I knew you were thinking about Rebecca. How could I ask you to love me when I knew you loved Rebecca still? Whenever you touched me, I thought you were comparing me to Rebecca. Whenever we did anything together, I thought you were saying, this I did with Rebecca, and this, and this. It was true, wasn't it?
Oh, my God! You thought I loved Rebecca? You still think so, even though you know I killed her? I hated her, I tell you. Our marriage was a farce from the beginning. She was vicious, damnable, rotten, through and through. We never loved each other, never had one moment of happiness together. Rebecca was incapable of love, of tenderness, of all decency. When I married her, I was told that I was the luckiest man in the world. She was so lovely, so accomplished, so amusing, and I believed them. Or tried to. But there was something about her eyes. She made a bargain with me. I'll run your house for you. I'll look after your precious Manderley for you, and people will envy us. They'll say we're the luckiest couple in all England. What a leg pull, eh, Max? Yes, she said that. And then she went her own way, knowing that I'd never expose her to the divorce courts. I put Manderley first before everything else, before even my own shame and loathing and disgust for all that she was and all she did.
Oh, my darling, my Maxim, my love.
Do you understand? Do you? Our life was a shabby lie. She had her men friends down to stay. She always had men. That fellow Favell, a cousin of hers, took to coming here and staying at the boathouse when I was away.
He came here on the day you went to London.
You saw him too? Why didn't you tell me? I got it from Crawley, who saw his car turn out of the lodge gates. Anyhow, that night, I warned her that if I found him here, anywhere on the estate, I'd shoot him. He had a filthy reputation. She told me that she could get her faithful Danvers to swear anything she asked her to swear in court. She defied me to try and prove to the world that we were anything less than the perfect couple. If I had a child, Max, she said, neither you nor anyone else would ever prove that it wasn't yours. She laughed and went on laughing. I thought she'd never stop. God, how funny, she said. To all your smug local friends and all your tenants, I'll be the perfect mother like I've been the perfect wife. She turned and faced me, smiling, defiant. When I killed her, she was smiling still. I fired at her heart. She stood there. She didn't fall at once. The bullet passed right through. That slow smile stayed on her face. Her eyes were wide open. I dragged her body into the cabin of the boat and set sail. But a wind came up, and I knew that we'd be in deep water in a matter of minutes if I didn't do something. I opened the seacocks and drove a spike into the planks. The water came in. I got away in the dinghy before the boat sank. I cleaned up the boathouse and was in my room by the time Mrs. Danvers came to me with her fears for Rebecca's life. Later, I went to Edgecombe and identified another woman's washed-up body as hers. I knew it meant nothing. It was only a question of time before the truth came out. She knew she'd win in the end. It was in her smile.
Her body had come back. But now I was free of her forever. I was free now to be with Maxim, to touch him and hold him and love him.
Yes? Oh, hello, Colonel Julian. I see. What are you going to do? No, I'm afraid I don't. Possibly. Thank you. Good night. Colonel Julian's the magistrate for Kerrith. Searles reported to him. He said he has to go out with us tomorrow to examine the boat and the body. He asked me if I had any idea whose body it could be.
What did you say?
Well, I said I didn't know. And he asked me something else.
What?
He asked me if I thought it possible I had made a mistake when I went up to Edgecombe.
He's asked that already.
I said it might be possible. Yes, the body will be identified as Rebecca's. You know we're not going to be able to avoid an inquest, don't you?
I don't understand, madam, why you sent the change in menu by way of Robert.
I should prefer something hot today, Mrs. Danvers. If they won't eat the salmon that came in yesterday in the kitchen, then you'd better throw the whole lot away. So much waste goes on in this house that a little more won't make much difference. Don't tell me you can't think of anything to give us. You must have menus for all occasions.
I'm not used to having messages sent to me by Robert. Mrs. De Winter always instructed me personally by house telephone.
I'm afraid it doesn't concern me very much what Mrs. De Winter used to do. I am Mrs. De Winter now, and if I choose to send a message by Robert, I'll do so.
Captain Searle called here yesterday, didn't he? Frith says they found Mrs. De Winter's boat. He says there's a story about a body in the boat. Why should there be a body? Mrs. De Winter always sailed alone.
It's no use asking me, Mrs. Danvers. I don't know any more than you do.
Don't you? I'll give the orders about lunch.
Go on, Mr. Tabb.
Well, sir,
After the drowning accident last year, a lot of people in Kerrith made unpleasantness about my boat building. Some said I let Mrs. de Winter start the season in a leaky, rotten boat. I lost orders on account of it. Well, when her boat was found yesterday, I got permission from Captain Sell to have a look at it. I wanted to satisfy myself that the work I put into it had been sound.
Did you come away satisfied?
Well, with my own work, yes. But what I want to know is this. Who drove holes in her planking? Rocks didn't do it. The nearest rock was 5 feet away. Besides that, they weren't holes made by a rock. They were done with a spike.
What holes were these? How many of them?
Well, there were 3 of them altogether. One right forward by her chain locker, and the other 2 close together amidships underneath her floorboards at the bottom. The ballast had been shifted too. It was lying loose. And that's not all. The seacocks have been turned on.
What are seacocks?
The fitting that plugs the pipes leading from a wash basin or lavatory, sir. Mrs. de Winter had a little place fitted up right aft. Well, these plugs are always kept tight closed when you're underway. Otherwise the water could flow in. When I examined the boat yesterday, both seacocks were turned full on. Well, with those holes in her planking, sir, and the seacocks not closed, it wouldn't take long for a small boat like her to sink. Not much more than 10 minutes, I should say. Those holes were definitely not there when the boat left my yard. I was proud of my work, and so was Mrs. de Winter. It's my opinion, sir, that the boat never capsized at all. She was deliberately scuttled.
Mr. de Winter, you heard the statement from James Tabb, who had the care of Mrs. de Winter's boat. Do you know anything of these holes driven in the planking?
Nothing whatever.
Can you think of any reason why they should be there?
No, of course not.
It's a shock to you, isn't it?
It was shock enough to learn that I made a mistake in identification over 12 months ago. And now I learn that my late wife was not only drowned in the cabin of her boat, but that the holes were bored in the boat with the deliberate intent of letting the water in so that the boat should sink. Does it surprise you that I should be shocked?
Mr. de Winter, I want you to believe that we all feel very deeply for you in this matter. No doubt you have suffered a shock, a very severe shock, in learning that your late wife was drowned inside her own cabin and not in the sea, as you supposed. And I am inquiring into the matter for you. I want, for your sake, to find out exactly how and why she died. I don't conduct this inquiry for my own amusement.
That's obvious enough.
I hope it is. Do you doubt the statement of James Tabb that 3 holes were hammered through Mrs. de Winter's boat?
Of course not. He's a boat builder. He knows what he's talking about.
The boat was moored in the private harbour belonging to Mandalay?
Yes.
Now, James Tabb has told us that a boat with those holes drilled in her bottom and the seacocks open could not float for more than 10 or 15 minutes.
Quite.
Therefore, we must assume that whoever took the boat out that night drove in the planking and opened the seacocks while the boat was under sail.
I suppose so.
Does this not strike you, Mr. de Winter, as being very strange?
Certainly.
You have no suggestion to make?
No. None at all.
Maxim. Oh.
It's all over.
What was the verdict?
Suicide.
Oh.
Without sufficient evidence to show the state of mind of the deceased.
Had they no idea of a motive?
No. Old Horridge wanted to know if Rebecca had any money troubles. Money troubles.
Well, how did it go?
Well, I was fast losing my temper. Then I was asked about my relations with Rebecca. That's when you fainted and had to be taken out. Well, your fainting brought me out with a jerk. I pulled myself together and got through it. I knew exactly what to say, and I said it. I faced Horridge all the time, never took my eyes off him. I'll remember his eyes over those spectacles to my dying day. Something has to happen this evening at the church.
They're going to bury Rebecca.
It's fixed for 6:30.
I wish you didn't have to go out again.
We'll talk things over when I get back. We'll start again once this thing is over. We can do it, I know we can. It's 6:10. I must be going.
I'll come with you.
No. I don't want you to come.
Mr. Jack Favell, madam.
Good evening, Mrs. De Winter. I trust you are feeling better since that little incident at the inquest.
You told my butler you wanted to see Maxim. I'm afraid he's out at the moment.
Oh, waiting doesn't bother me. Don't mind putting my feet up after that little farce in Kerrith today.
Our plans have changed. It's quite possible Maxim won't be back all evening.
Oh, has he run off?
What do you mean?
Well, actually, I rather hope Maxime doesn't get back in time for dinner. What say you?
Mr. Favell, I'm very tired. If you want to see my husband, you should make an appointment for tomorrow morning.
No, I'm quite harmless. Really, I am. Mac's been telling tales about me, huh? I'm not the big bad wolf, you know. I'm a perfectly harmless bloke. And I think you are behaving splendidly. Been a shock for me, I can tell you. Rebecca was my cousin. I was damn fond of her.
Yes, I know. I'm very sorry for you.
We were brought up together. All this has been a bloody shock. So, what's Max going to do about it? That's what I want to know. Does he think he can sit back now that sham inquest is out of the way? I'm going to see justice is done for Rebecca. Suicide. You and me know it wasn't suicide, don't we? Don't we?
What the hell are you doing here?
As a matter of fact, Max, old chap, I came over to congratulate you on the inquest this afternoon.
Do you mind leaving the house? Or shall I get the servants to throw you out?
Oh, you don't want them to hear what I've got to say, do you?
Maxim?
Oh, it's all right.
Look here, Max. I guess you don't keep any secrets from your little wifey. So let's put our cards on the table. You know about Rebecca and me. We were lovers, weren't we? I've never denied it. Anyhow, like all the other fools, I believe that Rebecca was drowned in the bay and washed up at Edgecombe. That's how she'd go, I reckoned. Then I picked up the paper a few days ago and read about the discovery of the body. I got in touch with Mrs. Danvers, and she told me the body was Rebecca's. So I came down to the inquest. Well, Max, old man, what have you got to say about those holes in the planking?
The inquest has delivered its verdict.
Suicide? Ha. What about this note, then? It was the last note Rebecca ever wrote to me. Here it is. Recognize the handwriting? Dear Jack, I tried to ring you, but could get no answer. I shall be at the boathouse this evening. I'll leave the door open for you. I've got something to tell you, and I want to see you as soon as possible, Rebecca. What do you say to that? Would it have made a difference to the verdict if the coroner had read that? Doesn't sound much like a suicide note, does it? Now then, why can't we come to some agreement on this? Huh? I'm not a rich man, too fond of gambling for that. What gets me down is that I've never had any capital to fall back on. If I had a settlement of 2,000 or 3,000 a year, I could jog along comfortably enough. Ah, what do you say?
You think you can frighten me, don't you? Well, you're wrong. Shall I ring Colonel Julian and ask him to come over? He's the magistrate. He'd be interested in your story.
Good bluff, but it won't work. You wouldn't dare. I've got enough evidence here to hang you.
We'll see, shall we?
Maxim.
Get me Kerrith 17. Evening, Colonel Julian. You made very good time.
You said it was urgent, so I came at once.
I want you to meet Mr. Jack Favell, my late wife's first cousin.
Your face seems familiar. I probably met you in the old days here at Manderley.
Quite. I've asked you here because he has something to tell you. Go ahead, Favell.
Look here, Colonel. You were there at that inquest today, and so was I. I'm not satisfied with the verdict.
Have your reason?
Here's my evidence. A note written by Rebecca to me just before she died. Read that and see what you think.
Yes. So?
Well, is that the note of a woman who wanted to kill herself?
Well, on the face of it, no. But we don't know what the note refers to, do we? De Winter, do you know?
My cousin made a definite appointment with me in that note. What for, we'll never know, but that's beside the point. She was to spend the night at the boathouse waiting for me. Now, she might suddenly decide to go for a sail, all right, that was like her, but drill holes in the planking and deliberately drown herself like a neurotic girl? Oh, no, by Christ, no. Rebecca never drilled those holes or opened those seacocks. Rebecca was murdered. And if you want to know who the murderer is, there he stands with a superior smile on his face. He could hardly wait out the year before marrying again. Mr. Maximilian de Winter. Ha! He'll look well hanging, won't he?
The man's drunk.
Drunk, am I? I should have known you'd sympathize with the landed gentry. Well, this time for once, I've got the law on my side.
If you are such a champion of the law, you might care to explain why you didn't produce this note at the inquest.
Because I chose not to, that's why.
Oh,
I decided to tackle De Winter personally.
By telling me he was not a rich man and wouldn't mind a settlement of 2,000 or 3,000 a year.
I thought it was something like that. Favell, I don't know whether you are sufficiently sober to answer my questions, but we'll try. Do you have any proof to back up your accusation of murder?
Isn't this note proof enough? Plus the holes in the boat?
Can you bring a witness who saw Mr. De Winter do it?
Oh, witness be damned. Who else would kill her?
Kerrith has a large population. Perhaps we should make a door-to-door inquiry.
Very funny. As a matter of fact, there could be someone. A local half-wit who spends his nights sleeping out on the beach in summertime. He'd never have come forward on his own. But I could make him talk if he did see anything that night.
Who's he talking about?
He must mean Ben, the son of one of our tenants.
Can we get hold of this fellow and question him?
I'll send Robert down to his mother's cottage straight away.
Well, Ben, you know who I am, don't you?
Do you know Mr. Favell?
I never seen un.
Don't be a bloody fool. You've seen me at the boathouse dozens of times, haven't you?
No, I never seen no one.
Damned half-witted liar.
A convincing witness.
Has he come to take me to the asylum? I don't want to go there. They've cruel the folk in there. I want to stay home. I ain't done nothing.
That's all right, Ben. No one's going to put you in an asylum. Are you quite sure you've never seen this man?
I've never seen him.
You remember Mrs. De Winter, don't you? No, not this lady, the other lady who used to go to the boathouse.
Eh? You were there, weren't you? You saw Mrs. De Winter come down to the boathouse, and then you saw Mr. De Winter too. He went into the boathouse after her. What happened then? What happened?
I ain't seen nothing. I want to stay home. I'm not going to the asylum. I never seen you. Never.
Your witness doesn't seem to have helped you much.
It's a plot. Somebody's paid him off to deny what he saw.
I think Ben might be allowed to go home.
Danny'll shed some light on this. She'll back me up. Colonel, I demand that you question Mrs. Danvers.
Mrs. Danvers was subdued in the presence of authority. She began to cry. She cried and cried. No one would stop her. I wanted to scream and run out of the room. Eventually she recovered herself, and as I expected, she was quite definite that Rebecca wouldn't want to commit suicide. But something else came to light. It was known Rebecca had spent the fatal day in London before returning to Manderley. Mrs. Danvers had her appointment book, and it was decided to look up the date to find out whom she might have seen while in London.
Ah, yes, here we are. Hair appointment at 12, lunch at the club. What's this? Baker, 2 o'clock. Who was Baker?
Baker? I've never heard of anyone called Baker.
Well, here it is. Baker, in her own writing. I believe if we knew who he was, we might get to the bottom of this whole thing. She wasn't in the hands of moneylenders, was she?
Mrs. De Winter? It's preposterous.
Or blackmailers? Had she any enemies? Anyone she was afraid of?
Mrs. De Winter afraid? She was afraid of no one.
Who cares about this Baker character? If he was important, why didn't Danny know about him? Rebecca never kept anything from Danny.
Oh, there's something here at the back of the book. Among the telephone numbers, Baker, 0488. No exchange.
There's something here, too. A mark beside the number. Could it be an M?
It might be an M. Try museum.
Right. Hello? I want you to get me London. Museum 0488. Yes, I'll wait.
Oh, God, please don't let it be true. Don't let Baker be found. Please, God, make Baker be dead. Don't bring it closer and closer to Maxim.
Hello? Is that Museum 0488? Can you tell me if anyone by the name of Baker lives there? Yes? Oh, can you tell me who he is? I see. Could I have his address? Yeah, I'll just take that down. Right. Right. Thank you. It was the night porter from an address in Bloomsbury. It's a doctor's consulting rooms during the day. Now, apparently, Baker's given up the practice and left 6 months ago, but the porter gave me his address. It's somewhere near Barnet, north of London. Not on the telephone, so we can't ring him up.
Some goddamn face cream maker.
It seems not. The porter told me that Dr. Baker has been a well-known women's specialist.
There might have been something seriously wrong with her.
Can't understand it. I don't know what it means. Why didn't she tell me? Why did she keep it from me? She told me everything.
I've got something to tell you, and I want to see you as soon as possible. That's what she wrote you, Favell, after she'd seen this Dr. Baker.
Well, it does connect up, I have to admit. But what the hell was the matter with her?
Oh, there's nothing for it, De Winter. We're going to have to go up to London and see this man.
The sooner it's cleared up, the better.
I rather think I'd like to come up with you, just to make sure you two don't start cooking up evidence between you.
I told Maxim I wanted to go to London to see this through with him. It was decided the four of us would go up by car the following morning, Favell saying he would follow us in his own car. Colonel Julian returned home and Favell to his hotel for the night. That evening, Maxim and I took in the peace and beauty of Manderley. Would it be our last evening? Would another 24 hours see Maxim arrested for the murder of Rebecca? Finding Dr. Baker's house in North London seemed an interminable business. But eventually we arrived at tea time that day. Although he had retired from his practice, he'd kept all his medical records at home. But he was reluctant to reveal anything to us until Maxim and Colonel Julian explained the legal implications of the case. The doctor was slow and deliberate. It seemed an age while he went in search of his records, and another age before he got to the nub of the matter.
Understand, I wouldn't reveal any of this if the course of justice weren't at stake.
Right.
Mrs. De Winter had come to me the week before, complaining of symptoms, and I took some x-rays. I haven't the photographs here, but I kept notes on them. I remember she said to me, "I want to know the truth. I don't want soft words in a bedside manner." Well, she asked for the truth, and I let her have it.
Go on.
The pain was as yet slight, but the growth was deep-rooted. Another 3 or 4 months, and she'd have been under morphia. An operation by this stage was no earthly use at all. Outwardly, of course, apart from looking a little thin, she seemed a perfectly healthy woman. Oh, and I also found from the x-rays a certain malformation of the uterus. That, of course, had nothing to do with the disease, but it meant she would never have been able to bear a child.
I never had the remotest idea. She kept it a secret from everyone. Huh. It's been a stroke of luck for you, hasn't it, Max? Well, well, the law can get you yet.
Have you anything else on your mind?
No, I won't keep you. Cut along back to your precious Manderley. While you still got it. Fare you well.
He can't do anything, De Winter. Just bluffing. He hasn't a thread of a case now. Baker's evidence would quash it. I thought the solution would lie in Baker. A dreadful thing for her. Enough to send a beautiful young woman right off her head. I suppose you never had any idea of this?
None.
I don't think it would do any harm if I let it be known, quietly around Kerrith, that a London doctor has supplied us with a motive for her suicide. People are bound to talk, you know. Oh, by the way, I'm spending the night with my sister in St. John's Wood. Thought I'd get the train back to Cornwall tomorrow. I'm sure you'd be welcome if you both wanted to come back with me to dinner.
Well, thank you, but I think we'd like to be independent. I don't know what to say about all you've done today, but then you know without my telling you.
Oh, my dear fellow, I've been only too glad to be of service. Now you must put it behind you both. You won't have any more trouble from Favell, I'm sure. But if you do, I count on you to tell me at once. I'd be inclined, if I were you, to take a short holiday. Go abroad, perhaps. Just faintly possible, certain little difficulties may arise. Not from Favell, but from other quarters. We don't know what's been said, do we? Remember the old saying, out of sight, out of mind? If people aren't there to be talked about, the talk dies. It's the way of the world. Oh, my sister's down near Avenue Road. I'll let you know where you can throw me out.
A nice, quiet dinner, and then we'll take it slowly back to Mandalay. It won't be too late for you.
You know I'd rather be there than anywhere else.
How much of the truth do you think Julian guessed? I think he knows everything.
If he does, he'll never tell. Never.
He won't, perhaps, but there's bound to be endless talk about those holes in the boat. I believe Rebecca lied to me on purpose. She wanted me to kill her, make a quick end of it. That's why she laughed even when I shot her. It was her last joke on me. I'm not sure she hasn't won, even now.
What do you mean? How can she have won?
I don't know. Something's nagging at me. I'm going to ring up Frank Crawley back at the office. I won't be long.
Everything all right?
Something very odd. Frith telephoned Frank Crawley to say he thought Mrs. Danvers had cleared out. She's gone, disappeared. Apparently, she'd been packing all day. Frith rang Frank, and Frank told him to tell Mrs. Danvers to come and see him at the estate office, but she never showed up. About 6:10, she had a long-distance telephone call. At 6:45, Frith knocked on her door, but found her rooms empty. They think she must have left the house through the woods. She never passed the lodge gates.
Isn't it a good thing? We would have had to send her away anyway.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I knew there was nothing anyone would do to us anymore. It was going to be very different in the future. We would have people to stay, and I'd see to their rooms, arrange the flowers, order the food, and we would have children. Surely we would have children. The motion of the car was steady, and the pulse of my mind beat with it. 100 images came to me in my drowsiness. I dreamt of Mandalay and Mrs. Danvers standing at the top of the staircase in her black dress. Then I was sending out invitations in the morning room. But then I looked at them and found they weren't in my handwriting at all. They were written in long, slanting strokes. I pushed the cards away and got up to look in the mirror. A face stared out at me that was not my own. It was very pale, very lovely, framed in a cloud of dark hair. The eyes narrowed and smiled, the lips parted. The face in the glass stared back at me and laughed. And then I saw she was sitting on a chair before the dressing table in her bedroom, and Maxim was brushing her hair. He held her hair in his hands, and as he brushed it, he wound it slowly into a thick rope. It twisted like a snake, and he took hold of it with both hands and smiled at Rebecca and put it round his neck. No, no.
What is it, darling? What's the matter? Sit close. Oh, you're cold. You've been asleep for 2 hours. We'll be home soon.
What time is it?
Well, it's now about 2:20.
It almost looks as though the dawn were breaking over there beyond the hills. Can't be, though. It's too early.
Well, it's also in the wrong direction. You're looking west.
I know. Maxim, it's in winter you see the northern lights, surely not in summer.
That's not the northern lights. That's Mandalay.
Maxim, my God, what's happened? He drove faster, much faster. The road to Mandalay lay ahead. There was no moon. The sky above our heads was inky black. But the sky on the horizon was not dark at all. It was shot with crimson like a splash of blood. And the ashes blew towards us with the salt wind from the sea.
In Rebecca, by Daphne du Maurier, Maxim de Winter was played by Christopher Cazenove, and Mrs. De Winter by Janet Moore. Mrs. Danvers was Rosalie Crutchley, Jack Favell, Nicholas Grace, and Colonel Julian, Frederick Treves. Mrs. Van Hopper was Irene Sutcliffe, Frith, John Gabriel, Beatrice, Margaret Courtney, Ben, Danny Schiller, and Clarice was Elizabeth Mansfield. Horridge was played by Brian Miller, Tab by John Bull, and Dr. Baker by Geoffrey Whitehead. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier was dramatized for radio by Brian Miller. The director was Cherry Cookson.
But this is absurd. I've spoken with His Royal Highness nearly every day for the past 12 months. He's often said that I've almost become one of the family, and that's what I feel. I've come to adore those children. It breaks my heart to leave them. And now, on my last day, you're telling me I can't see him. You're asking me to pack up my tent and leave like a thief in the night.
My dear lady,
Baron, I will not do it. I wish to see the prince. And it's not only to make my farewell in a civilized fashion. I have something I must say to him.
Say it to me, Miss Froy. I can assure you I'll pass it on to His Royal Highness the moment he returns to the palace. That won't be for some days,
This
but
isn't something I wish to entrust to a third party. Where exactly has he gone?
Miss Froy, it grieves me to say so, but I must point out that your position here has somewhat changed in the last few days. As governess to the royal children, you did enjoy the prince's confidence.
You mean
now,
because I'm leaving?
I mean because you're proposing to come back.
I don't quite understand.
Miss Froy, it cannot have escaped your attention that the prince is beset by enemies.
You mean Herr Hitler and those dreadful Nazis?
I mean closer to home. I mean the people who are plotting to overthrow the government and the royal family and substitute some form of so-called democracy.
Really, Baron, you mustn't talk to me about politics. I know nothing at all about them.
That is your only saving grace.
What on earth do you mean?
I mean, dear lady, that if for 1 second I believed you had a political motive for what you're proposing to do, you wouldn't be traveling back to England this afternoon, but standing trial.
Baron Hofmeyer.
Oh, yes, Miss Froy. Am I mistaken, or have you been in communication with a certain Jan Pasterrecht?
But that's exactly what I want to talk to His Royal Highness about. Mr. and Mrs. Pasterrecht have asked me to come back next year as governess to their 4 children, 3 girls and a lovely little boy. Enchanting. And I do so love your country, Baron. Surely His Royal Highness would have no objection to my returning to Zabrovnia to...
Miss Froy, you are either very stupid, and I don't believe you're that, or incredibly naive. Aren't you aware that Jan Pasterrecht is the leader of the Social Democratic Party? That he is the man behind these plots?
Oh, no. Oh, Baron Hofmeyer, surely not.
Yes, Miss Froy. You must take my word for it. And now, I really must ask you to leave. At once, please, Miss Froy.
Oh, but Baron, this makes it all the more vital that I speak with the prince. I must explain. I simply must. Where is he?
Miss Froy, as I've been trying to tell you, His Royal Highness has left the capital. He is not here, and he won't be back for at least 3 days. By that time, I trust you will be safely home in England, and your stay with us will... Miss Froy, if you don't mind...
But that is the prince. That's the prince's voice.
Hofmeyer, give us a drink. Miss Froy.
Your Royal Highness, I'm so glad to see you.
My dear Miss Froy.
Baron Hofmeyer here was trying to tell me you weren't in the palace, but I couldn't leave without saying a proper goodbye. You've all been so good to me.
But we are devastated to see you leave. The children will miss you terribly. We all will.
You're so kind. There is one other thing, Your Royal Highness. I've been given the opportunity of returning to Zabrovnia.
My dear Miss Froy, word had reached me, and you cannot imagine how it grieved me to learn that you'd been misled by the agitator Pasterrecht. He's so very plausible. But I'm quite sure you wouldn't consider distressing me by even thinking of serving in his household.
Of course not, sir. If you don't wish it.
And now, dear Miss Froy, farewell. I wish you a safe journey home.
The Lady Vanishes, dramatised for radio by Neville Teller from the novel The Wheel Spins by Ethel Lena White. With Rennie Asherson as Miss Froy, Jenny Funnell as Iris Carr, Mark Peyton as Maximilian Hare, and Mark Tandy as Professor Wilberforce. The Lady Vanishes.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Is there anyone English in this restaurant car? Anyone?
Can I be of help?
Oh, thank God. I'm sure there's some horrible mistake and I can't speak a word of this wretched language.
Don't worry, I speak the lingo. What's the trouble?
May I offer my services as interpreter?
Oh, he's no good. He only knows grammar. I can swear in the vernacular, and we may need a spot of profanity. Now then, why don't you sit down and tell us what's happened?
Oh, thank you. And thank heaven for someone who can understand what I'm saying.
Would you like something to drink? Coffee, fruit juice?
Oh, nothing, thank you. Oh, God. Where shall I begin? Listen. An Englishwoman has disappeared from the train. Oh, you must believe me. She's a real person. But the Baroness says that... Oh, dear.
You're in a terrible state, Miss... What is your name?
I'm Iris Carr.
My name's Hare. Much too long for you to remember. Better call me Maximilian. Though I will answer to Max.
My name's Wilberforce.
I call him the Prof. He's the genuine article, incidentally. Holds the chair of Slavonic and East European Studies somewhere. I forget quite where.
Cambridge University.
Oh, there now. I had an idea it was somewhere I should have remembered.
Now, Miss Carr, perhaps you could give us a more coherent account of what has happened.
I really don't know where to begin.
There's some very good advice in Alice in Wonderland. Begin at the beginning.
Wonderland. That's just it. I feel as though I've somehow slipped out of the real world. Or been pushed.
Miss Carr, really? If you can't tell us what's happened, how on earth can we help you? Now, please, do pull yourself together. What are you doing in Zabrovnia in the first place?
I've been on holiday with some friends. They went back to England at the weekend. I decided to stay on for the few days left of the season.
On your own?
In a way. I mean, there were some English people in the hotel, but they were only nodding acquaintances. I don't think they approved of my crowd. Or of me, come to that. Not surprising, really. They're not precisely my type.
I must say, I'm looking forward to seeing my garden again.
Our garden, Evelyn, dear. I do have an equal share in the property. As a matter of fact, I do most of the gardening.
Oh, you're always so literal, Rose. You must forgive my sister, Vicar. She gives the impression we're always at each other's throats. Nothing could be further from the truth.
I'm sure. This landscape is quite spectacular, of course, but Suffolk is so beautiful at this time of year.
Well, what I'm looking forward to is sitting in a really comfortable chair again. This thing's agony. Oh, here come the bridal pair. Handsome couple.
I wonder who they really are, Vicar. That man's face, I know I've seen it somewhere, and not attached to the name Todhunter either.
Oh, my sister's off again, Mr. Barnes. Perhaps he's a film star, Rose dear.
Oh, do you think so? How exciting. I love the pictures. Do you go often, Miss Floodporter?
As often as she can, Mrs. Barnes.
No, he's not a film star. I'd certainly recognise someone I'd seen in the cinema. But there's some mystery about those two. I feel it.
So do I. I wonder, do you think they're really married?
Perhaps they're wondering the same about you, Edna, my dear. Isn't it simpler to believe that we're all what we say we are? Even parsons and their wives? I think I'll stroll down to the village to say goodbye to my friends. See you all later.
How can he talk to them when he doesn't know the language?
Oh, he makes them understand. Sympathy, you know, and common humanity. Hello, my dear. Left all alone?
Yes, by choice.
Aren't you lonely?
Not at all. I'm enjoying my own company.
Are you travelling back to England on Tuesday?
That's right.
It's a long journey, and they usually try to pack too many passengers into the last good train of the season. Would you like to join Mr. Barnes and me? We could travel together.
Thank you, but I really would prefer to be on my own.
Just as you wish, my dear. I hope you have a pleasant journey.
Wait! Oh, do wait!
Here, miss. This carriage. Quick, quick.
Is there a seat in this compartment?
I'm sure we can squeeze you in, my dear. Oh, come and sit next to me. The train's very full, isn't it?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Up there, porter.
Excusez, madame.
Daj pazi mulesnes predny.
Chciałbym se wasze wysości.
Potowan.
Odmak, wasze wysości, odmak.
Thank you, porter. Yeah, will this do?
Thank you, miss. Very good. Goodbye, miss.
Potowan mullet.
Come and sit down, my dear. It may be a bit of a squash, but it's better than standing.
Thank you. I'm afraid the porter upset that lady in the corner seat. She's rather formidable, isn't she?
She's the Baroness von Zoenstein, and she called him an oaf twice.
Good heavens. Can you speak the language?
Oh, quite a bit.
Do you know Zabrovnia well?
Quite well. I've been living here en famille for the past year. In fact, the Baroness is a member of the family. It's not wise to mention names, but I was governess to the highest in the place.
I wonder if she speaks English. Excuse me, madam. Do you happen to speak English?
Oh.
Apparently not, though I bet she does. But I don't think anyone else in this compartment does.
I think you're right. You'll just have to put up with me until we reach Trieste. What do you say to a nice cup of tea? Shall we make our way to the restaurant car?
What a good idea. Excuse me. Oh, sorry.
It's this way, I think, my dear. Just glance into the next compartment as we go by, and I'll tell you something.
As soon as I did so, I regretted it. What I saw was horrifying. A figure, the head, eyes, and forehead bandaged, and the features concealed by a crisscross of plaster strips, lay stretched on the length of one seat covered with rugs. I tried to imagine what sort of mutilation a face must suffer to be bandaged like that, and I shuddered. A nun sat by the figure, and a man with a black spade beard was talking to her.
You recognize that man, my dear?
Didn't he come into our compartment and speak to the Baroness?
Yes, he did. And that's how I know about this. He's a doctor. His patient's a woman who's been terribly injured in a car accident. The doctor's rushing her to a hospital in the north of the country for a tricky operation. This train's the fastest way of getting her there.
That nun looks something less than spiritual.
Oh, she doesn't spend her time on her knees. She's a fully trained nursing sister. Come on, my dear. Excuse me. Excuse me, please.
Sorry.
Oh,
I beg.
No, my fault entirely. It's all these people. I was just looking out to see if our tea was coming. I ordered it from an attendant.
You're English. This is my lucky day. I've been starved of English company for 12 months.
And now you're on your way home?
It's almost too good to be true. Look, we're just off to the restaurant car. Shall I send a waiter with your tea?
Oh, that would be really kind. My husband's such a wretched traveller. He's almost prostrated. Oh, hello, Miss Carr. I hope you found a seat.
Only just.
We all got on. The Todd Hunters are on their own, of course, but the Miss Flood Porters are next door to us. They're having tea at the moment.
And that's what we should be doing. Goodbye, and I won't forget the waiter. want all this fun? Milk, please. Why do you like it? It's travel. We're moving. And best of all, we're on our way back home. Now, my dear, I noticed that English lady called you Miss Carr. But what's your Christian name?
Iris.
How lovely. I'm afraid Winifred pales into insignificance beside the thought of that lovely flower. I'm Winifred Froy.
It seems rather late in the day to say how do you do.
Yes, I feel we're quite old friends.
Me too, even though I know nothing about you.
Oh, there's not much to know. I've been doing a year as governess to the children of... No, I'd better not say. But there's no one more important in Zabrovnia. You can have no idea of the power of my late employer. What he says goes.
Isn't that rather, well, degrading?
I suppose it is. But that's how things are in this part of the world. After a time, one becomes quite spineless. And that's not English, Iris, is it? Oh, it'll be lovely to be home. Father and Mother are as excited as children.
You still have your parents?
Oh, yes. A little frail, but still going strong. And so is Sock.
Sock?
Short for Socrates. He's an old English sheepdog. Mother says she's sure he knows I'm coming home. The old duffer trots off to meet every train and then comes back with his tail down, the picture of depression. The parents can't wait for his reaction when I do arrive.
I'd love to see him.
Those two ladies over there. I'm sure they're English.
Where? Oh, yes, the Flood Porters. They were at our hotel. They're sisters. Well, I suppose we'd better be getting back. Though I can't say I relish spending the next few hours in the company of that appalling grande dame.
The Baroness? A bit overwhelming, perhaps, but quite kind-hearted beneath it all, and very generous.
Really?
Oh, yes. There was some muddle about my place on the train. I booked second class, but there wasn't a single seat left. Do you know, the Baroness paid the difference, so that I could travel first class in her carriage.
Did she?
She said she was sure my late employer would have wished it. Really kind. Well, shall we make a move?
Excuse me. Oh, please. Excuse me.
Excuse me. Do have a peek in this compartment. There's a glorious couple, just like film stars come to life.
Yes, they were staying at our hotel too. Their name's Todhunter, and they don't like company.
Of course not, when they're so in love. Oh dear, he's looking daggers at me.
Yes, he'll certainly know you again. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Oh, look, I wonder how that poor patient is doing. I do hope they get her to hospital in time.
Oh, and here we are. Oh, dear. There's that Baroness to face again.
I tell you what, don't let's sit mum. Even if I am under an obligation to her, I'm going to remember we're English. We won't be put down.
That's the spirit. Though I'm not sure I'll be up to it, Miss Froy. My head's been aching like mad for hours.
You poor thing. I thought you were looking a little poorly.
I think I must have had too much sun yesterday.
Then come and sit down. Oh, you'd better not have dinner in the restaurant car. I tell you what, I'll bring you something later. Now, why don't you get a little nap? You'll feel much better when you wake.
I closed my eyes. I could still hear Miss Froy fluttering about me, but the carriage was so warm that I soon became drowsy, and at last I dozed off. I awoke suddenly. I don't know why. My head was still throbbing. I turned it to ease the pain. Miss Froy wasn't beside me. To be honest, I was rather glad. I didn't feel up to making conversation. None of the other passengers took the slightest notice of me. The Baroness slept in her corner. The others sat silent. A pretty girl of about 20, and a family party consisting of 2 large parents and a small daughter. I looked at them for a moment or two, until my lids drooped again, and once more I fell asleep. The next time I woke, it was pretty dark. Miss Froy was still not beside me. Not long ago, I'd been pleased by her absence. Now I felt lonely, eager to see her again. Where was she? It was at that moment I happened to look up at the rack. Miss Froy's suitcase was no longer there.
Well, obviously she'd moved to another compartment.
Didn't you say there'd been some mix-up with her seat? Perhaps it had become free after all.
I thought that, but then I remembered that the Baroness had actually paid the difference for her to travel first.
Oh, that's right.
Besides, Miss Froy would never have left me without a word of explanation. And she'd promised to bring me dinner. No, she'd never just slip out of the compartment like that.
Well, I take it you questioned your fellow passengers.
I tried. I just couldn't make anyone understand. I couldn't reach them. The Baroness was still sleeping in her corner, and I suddenly felt desperate. I went over to her and shook her arm. The others gasped. You'd have thought I was committing sacrilege. Wake up.
Oh, madame.
Wake up, please.
Chi del latte? Oh, it is you. What is it you require?
Where is Miss Froy?
Miss Froy? I know nobody who has that name.
She sat over there, beside me.
You make a mistake. No English lady has sat there ever.
You are the Baroness von Zoenstahlen.
That is my name?
Well, it was Miss Froy who told me so. I talked to her, and we went and had tea together. Oh, you must remember.
There is nothing to remember. How you came by my name is a matter of indifference. But I tell you this. There has been no English lady here in this carriage, never at any time, except you. You are the only English lady here.
You're saying the Baroness denied that this Miss Froy was ever in the compartment?
Precisely. I was literally dumbfounded. I couldn't say a word. I simply couldn't understand why she should say such a thing.
So you came looking for help and ran into us two?
Not at once. I was certain she was somewhere on the train. So I went to find her.
Bully for you.
It didn't do much good. The corridor's so jam-packed that getting through is like swimming in a sea of treacle. All I could see was a blur of faces, and my head was giving me hell. Still is, come to that.
Poor you.
After a bit, I reached the compartment with that vicar, Barnes, I think his name is, and his wife. He looked dreadful.
Why, it's Miss Carr.
I'm terribly sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for my friend.
Oh, yes?
You remember her? She sent the waiter with your tea.
It was very kind of her. Will you give her my special thanks?
When I find her, she left the compartment some time ago, and she hasn't returned.
Well, she can't have left the train, so she's bound to be back soon.
Well, can I find her for you?
Certainly not, Kenneth. Don't be absurd. You're in no fit state to go traipsing round the train. Just look at you. In any case, you don't know what she looks like.
Oh, that's true. Oh, isn't it humiliating to be such a wretched traveller? I'm sorry, my dear. I'd be more hindrance than help.
So I didn't pursue it. I then went down the complete length of the train, and then came back here to the restaurant car to see if anyone could help me.
Of course, we'll help you, won't we, Prof?
Well, the first step is clearly to interview the other passengers in your compartment. If the lady hasn't returned by the time we've done that, I may consider calling the guard and asking for an official examination of the train.
Oh, thank you, Professor Wilberforce. You can't imagine what a relief
The truth
it is to
is, this is his best chance in years to practice the lingo. Well, what are we waiting for? Lead the way, Miss Carr.
Miss Carr, you appear to have made an extraordinary mistake. I've cross-questioned everyone except the little girl.
Who wouldn't talk to him?
And I can tell you that no one in that carriage knows anything about the English lady you say is missing.
But that's absolutely impossible.
Nor does Dr. Traunitz here. You know he's travelling with his patient in the next compartment. That's so, isn't it, Doctor?
I'm afraid it is. The questions and the answers were most explicit.
So what are you saying? That I invented Miss Froy?
I hardly know what to think.
Then I'll tell you. They're all lying. Every one of them.
I say, steady on. The man, the woman, that pretty young thing, and the rock of the aristocracy in black bombazine, all of them?
The man is a banker, really quite eminent. The Baroness's own, as a matter of fact. She vouches for him and for his wife. The young lady is the daughter of the agent for the whole Hohenstahlen estate. And as for the Baroness herself...
I don't care what they told you, Professor, or what the Baroness said. All I know is that I still owe Miss Froy for my tea. She paid for me.
Well, we can soon check up on that. If you had tea together, the waiter might remember her. Which one was it?
I don't know. My head was throbbing. I didn't take any notice.
I'd like to know what Miss Froy looks like. Describe her.
Oh, dear. I can't really tell you very much. She's middle-aged, ordinary. Just ordinary.
Tall or short? Fat or thin? Fair or dark?
Medium. She had blue eyes.
A totally unmemorable woman with blue eyes.
What was she wearing?
Tweed. Oatmeal flecked with brown. Patch pockets. A shirt blouse stitched with blue. And a small blue handkerchief in the breast pocket. Oh, and she was wearing a hat with a funny bright blue feather in it.
Stop. Now that you've remembered the hat, make a special effort and put a face under it.
Oh, it's no good. You see, I had such a frantic headache. I believe I had too much sun yesterday.
Ah, my dear young lady, that blow of the sun, it explains all. A delirium is not uncommon. The mind plays tricks. So, you see someone who is not there. You even think you talk to her. After you go to sleep. When you wake, you are better, so you see Miss Froy no more. Believe me, she is nothing but a delirium. A dream.
I think we may accept that as final. If I'd known the circumstances, I shouldn't have intervened. I hope you'll soon feel better, Miss Carr.
I may have a headache, but I've not gone gaga. Just a moment. I've thought of something. Baroness von Hohenstahlen.
I have already admitted to that name.
You have denied that Miss Froy was ever in this carriage, and everyone else here backs you up.
They say it because it is so. Why you think that I should invent this or that they should, I cannot imagine.
Nor can I. Miss Froy told me that you had been very kind to her.
Really? In what way?
She said there had been some problem about her seat, and that you pay the excess fare for her to travel in here.
How charming of me. I'm gratified to hear of my generosity. Unfortunately, I know nothing of it. But the ticket collector should be able to refresh my memory.
Well, that's easy enough to arrange. There he is at the end of the corridor. I'll fetch him. Pardon me.
This should really settle the matter, Miss Carr.
Here he is.
Light it up, Roger. You have a problem? Gentlemen, ladies?
This lady is the Baroness von Hohenstahlen. Did she pay you the extra fare to allow a second-class passenger to sit in this carriage?
Which second-class passenger?
An English lady, middle-aged. She wore a hat with a feather.
Where is she? Let me see her ticket.
That's just the problem. She's vanished.
I recall no such lady, madame. And I have upgraded nobody to first class.
I believe that concludes the matter. Miss Carr, at your behest, I have conducted a series of pointless and rather embarrassing interviews. I now propose to retire to my compartment. I sincerely hope that you won't expose us and yourself to any further ridicule.
Very well, Professor. Then I've only one course open to me. I shall have to prove to you that Miss Froy really does exist.
But how?
I'll start by speaking to the people I was with at the hotel. They all saw her.
All right. I'll come with you. Let's see if any of them can remember your Miss Froy, shall we?
Who's the girl looking in?
One of the mob from the hotel.
Help?
Mr. Todhunter, my name's Iris Carr. You remember me from the hotel, I'm sure. An Englishwoman called Miss Froy has disappeared from the train. You'll help me find her, won't you?
I'd be delighted to cooperate with you, but who is Miss Froy?
She's middle-aged, ordinary. She peeped in at your window as we went by, and you jumped up and pulled down the blind.
I'm sorry, but I've no recollection of any such occurrence.
But you saw her. Your wife called your attention to her. You were both annoyed.
Miss Carr, We aren't a peep show, and no one looked in. Do you mind if you shut the door? I want to rest before dinner.
I'm sorry, Miss Carr, but I can't recall your companion. Someone may have been with you at the table, but I wasn't wearing my glasses.
Neither was I, so I'm afraid we shan't be able to help you. It would be against our principles to identify someone we weren't sure of.
How about not raising a finger to help an Englishwoman in danger? What price your principles on that?
Danger? What could possibly happen to her on a crowded train?
Danger? Who's in danger? Oh, hello, Mrs. Barnes. I'm still trying to find my friend, Miss Froy. You remember? The lady who ordered your tea for you? I suppose you never saw her.
The little lady in tweed with a blue feather in her hat. Of course I remember her. We were so grateful for the tea.
Oh, Mrs. Barnes. Are you convinced now, Professor?
I'm sorry to have doubted your word, Miss Carr, but we had to have some corroborative evidence that Miss Froy actually exists.
And now we have it. Next question. What on earth's happened to the old dear?
And why did those foreigners all lie about her?
We'll have to play Spot the Lady. For my money, she's disguised as the Doctor. That beard looks totally phony to me. Why not give it a tug next time he passes?
Max, do take this seriously, please. She is still missing.
Sorry, you're right.
When are we due at Trieste?
Just before 11, I think. But the guard was telling me we have an unscheduled stop this side of the border at about 10:30, to let the doctor and his patient off.
And it's now nearly 6:30. Look, we mustn't waste any more time. We must find her. I know it sounds sloppy, but her people, they're old and a bit frail. They're expecting her home, counting the hours. And the fool of a dog meets every train. Oh, Lord. Sorry.
Take it easy, Iris. You're not on your own. Oh, watch out. Here comes Blackbeard.
Pardon me, but I thought you would wish to hear. Your friend has returned to the carriage.
Miss Froy? Really? Oh, how marvelous. Where was she?
All the time so near. In the next carriage, talking with my nurses.
The one place I didn't look. Of course she'd want to know how your patient was getting on. That's Miss Froy to a T. Well, come on. What are we waiting for?
You too, Prof. At last we can meet the elusive Miss Froy.
Мечете се, дайте да прочем. Дайте да прочем.
Sorry.
Oh, I beg your pardon, if I could... Thank you.
Ah, your carriage at last, Miss Carr. Allow me. And here she is.
But that's not Miss Froy.
What do you mean?
She's wearing her clothes, her hat, but that woman's an imposter. You aren't Miss Froy.
No, I have not heard that name before. I am Frau Kummer.
As I told you, there has been no English lady in this compartment except yourself. Of course, had you inquired about Frau Kummer?
Frau Kummer? I've never heard the name before.
But I introduced myself before we went to have tea together.
That's a lie. I've never seen you before in my life. You're a total stranger. Professor Wilberforce, this is not Miss Froy.
The lady herself has told us that.
But she's wearing her clothes. Why? What's become of Miss Froy?
A lady only you seem to have met.
It's a conspiracy of some sort. They're all in it.
Miss Carr.
Oh, let me think. Let me think. Mrs. Barnes, she spoke to Miss Froy. Oh, fetch her, Max, please.
Kenneth, my dear, you're looking so ill. Excuse me, please, I'm sorry. I'm really worried about you. Should you be doing this? Oh, if only I could get you home.
Well, I'll be all right, Edna. Excuse me. I am sorry. Pardon me. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I do apologize. Miss Carr. I understand you want my wife to identify a friend of yours?
Thank you both so much for coming.
Kenneth, let me get you back to the compartment. You ought to be lying down.
Here we are. Oh, do give us some room, please. Now, Mrs. Barnes, please look very carefully. Is this the lady who arranged for your tea to be sent?
Let me see. Yes, of course it is.
What happened?
You fainted, Iris. Nothing serious. So we brought you along to our bunny hatch. But all this is getting on top of you, you know.
Max, I want to talk to you. There is a Miss Froy. You must believe me. The trouble is, my head feels like a three-ring circus. I can't even quite remember what I told you and the professor earlier on. I'd like to go over the whole thing with you. What about it?
Good idea. One thing has struck me. From what you said, I'm pretty sure your Miss Froy was employed by the royal family. Crown Prince Frederick and his wife.
That makes sense.
You know the place was in a turmoil just before we left.
Was it?
Oh, yes. Some politico called Jan Pastrecht was supposed to be threatening a sort of armed uprising. But who knows? It's all plot and counterplot in these mid-European states. I'd have thought they had enough on their hands fending off a Nazi takeover. Word is Herr Hitler has his beady eye on Zabrovnia.
Oh, never mind all that. The important thing is you've worked out who Miss Froy's employer was from things she told me. Things I passed on.
But, Iris, that proves nothing. It could all apply equally well to Frau Kummer. No. Let's take a cold, hard look at the situation.
Go on.
You're suggesting that the Baroness has got rid of Miss Froy, never mind why or how, and that the passengers and the ticket collector, being local people, are backing her up. Well, knowing this part of the world, I think they would.
But it all seems such a clumsy sort of plot. I mean, dressing someone up as Miss Froy.
Ah, but that needn't have been part of the original plot at all.
You mean I upset their apple cart, barging into the carriage at the last minute?
Exactly. When you first made a fuss about Miss Froy, they'd all denied her existence. But when you said other English people had seen her, they had to produce someone.
Oh, Max, you're such a comfort. You see, you believe in Miss Froy too.
I'm not saying that, but I do promise to believe in you.
Max.
So, let's assume a plot inspired by the All-Highest in Zabrovnia and carried out by his relative, the Baroness von Zoenstahlen.
In collaboration with that doctor. I don't trust that man.
We'll go along with your feminine intuition, in cahoots with the doctor. Let's say they're both under orders to bump off Miss Froy. That instantly discredits all the foreign evidence.
You really are rather marvellous.
Hang on to the bouquets. Because against all that, we have some really insuperable obstacles. To start with, 6 eminently respectable English people have failed to corroborate Miss Froy's existence. Why?
That I don't know. I honestly don't know.
And then, why should a harmless English governess be the object of an elaborate plot by the head of state of Zabrovnia?
It seems unbelievable. Impossible.
So where does that leave us? No one, foreign or English, backs up your story. On the other hand, Mrs. Barnes positively identifies this Frau Kummer as the woman you were with on the way to tea. On top of that, you did suffer mild sunstroke yesterday, and you've been feeling the effects all day.
Oh, dear. So the doctor could be right. It's the sunstroke. I went to tea with that Kummer woman and later dreamt about Miss Froy.
Well, that's one logical explanation.
All right, Max. I give in. Let's forget about Miss Froy.
All alone, Miss Carr?
Yes, they've all gone to dinner. First sitting.
I'm pleased to find you alone, actually. You know, Miss Carr, Hare and I are both a bit worried about you.
There's no need.
No, but there is. You've suffered sunstroke.
I've more or less...
I was discussing it with Dr. Traunitz just now, and he came up with an admirable suggestion.
What suggestion?
As you know, the doctor's taking his patient to a hospital in the north of the country. He knows of an excellent nursing home very close by. He'll gladly arrange for you to spend the night there at no charge. You could have a good night's sleep and continue your journey tomorrow.
Most definitely not.
But my dear Miss Carr...
Professor Wilberforce, nothing on earth would induce me to go anywhere with that man. There really is nothing more to be said.
As you wish, Miss Carr. I was merely trying to be helpful.
Thank God we can drop this Todd Hunter farce before too long. It can't happen too soon for me.
I don't know what you're worried about. There's not much chance of his finding out.
But there is some. Is that what you're saying?
I'd say we were reasonably secure. Of course, one never knows what can happen. I've handled some very odd divorce cases in my time.
Divorce?
It was perhaps unfortunate there were English visitors at our hotel. And you are entirely too beautiful to remain anonymous for long.
You told me there was no risk. Oh, what a fool I've been.
I don't know why you're suddenly so anxious to get back to your husband.
Let's be honest about this, shall we? We're both in it for what we can get, and he can give me more than you can. If this ever gets out.
So it's lucky I was thinking ahead when that girl asked about her friend who's disappeared.
What do you mean?
If I hadn't denied all knowledge of her, I'd have had to make a statement at Trieste. Can't you see the headlines? English woman lost on Continental Express. Mr. Todd Hunter, pictured here. An Englishman travelling on the same train. I'd have been identified in 24 hours flat. And so would you, my sweet.
Oh.
I couldn't touch a thing. I'll eat when we get to Trieste.
But that's not for another hour. More if we're delayed getting the doctor's patient off the train. We'll be stopping before too long.
Max, tell me, could you write a detective story?
Can't spell, but I solved them like a shot.
Then let's have a demonstration. You've proved Miss Froy doesn't exist. Now, humour me. Pretend she does. Work out what might have happened to her.
You don't give up, I'll say that for you. Let me think. Okay, here goes. The strange disappearance of Miss Froy. Your Miss Froy is a spy who's got some information she's sneaking out of the country. So she's got to be bumped off. What better way than on a railway journey? People stop off, miss connections. By the time anyone got really concerned, the trail would be stone cold.
So is the whole train in the plot?
Oh no, just the Baroness, the Doctor and the nuns. But there's also the conspiracy of silence, which covers the passengers and the ticket collector. They're all Zabrovnians, and they'd all go along with the Baroness.
What about getting Miss Froy into the Baroness's compartment in the first place?
Oh, yes. Dirty work at the crossroads over Miss Froy's seat. They had to be sure she'd be with the Baroness and next door to the Doctor.
But what's happened to her?
I'll tell you. At this very moment, Miss Froy is lying flat out in the next compartment, tightly bound in bandages and covered with rugs.
Oh, my God! How? When?
It happened when you obligingly dropped off to sleep. Enter the Doctor. He asks Miss Froy if she would render some slight service to his patient. She went.
She would? I know she would.
Directly she enters, down comes the blind, and the three of them set on her.
3?
Of course. The patient's one of them. One holds her, the other stops her shouting, and the Doctor gives her a knockout injection.
Yes! Yes! I can see it! It could have happened.
They tie her up, gag her, and lay her out in the place of the false patient. But by now, you've unearthed some English people who remember Miss Froy. So down comes the blind again, as the second nun, the one who posed as the patient, dresses herself in Miss Froy's clothes.
Oh, Lord! What'll they do to her?
When we make our unscheduled stop in about 20 minutes from now, she'll be put into an ambulance, taken away and disposed of.
You're right. I know you're right. It's the only logical explanation.
Oh, Iris, for heaven's sake. I made it all up. It's a fantasy. I invented it.
Oh, I don't mean about Miss Froy being a spy. That's all poppycock. But it's what they've done with her, I'm sure of it. She's lying next door, doped up to the eyebrows, and wrapped round in bandages like an Egyptian mummy. Come on. We've got to find the Professor. We must rescue her before she's taken off the train.
Ah, Miss Carr. Here. come to join the doctor and me for dinner? The soup's very good.
Professor, I know where Miss Froy is.
Oh, dear. Miss Froy again. I had hoped we'd disposed of the mythical Miss Froy.
Do you still have your headache, Miss Carr?
Professor, Miss Froy is far from mythical, but she'll certainly be disposed of in little more than 15 minutes unless we do something.
What exactly do you mean, Miss Carr?
I'm afraid this is all my fault, Prof. I dreamt up a little fairy tale, and Iris has fastened onto it.
This is no fairy tale, believe me. Professor, you must take it seriously. As for you, Dr. Trownitz, I don't have to tell you to take it seriously, because you're in this game in deadly earnest.
My dear Miss Carr.
What precisely are you alleging?
Just this. That the doctor's patient, all conveniently wrapped in bandages from head to toe, is no accident victim but Miss Froy. That's why she's disappeared. And that's why they're going to remove her from the train before we reach the border.
But this is totally absurd, Miss Carr. My patient joined the train before you did.
Someone wrapped in bandages on a stretcher did. You enticed Miss Froy into that carriage while I was asleep, and you substituted her for your accomplice.
And where, if I may inquire, is the original patient?
That's obvious, Professor. Frau Kummer, now dressed in Miss Froy's clothes.
I've never heard of such a farrago of nonsense. Who on earth do you suppose dreamed up such a conspiracy? And why?
I think I know who. Why, I don't know. But believe me, Professor, Miss Froy, a dear, gentle creature who's never harmed a soul in her life, will be abducted from this train and probably killed, unless we do something about it. Oh, you must take this seriously. There's so little time.
Perhaps we'd better come at once to see my patient. I'm sorry to disturb your dinner, Professor, but the young lady is in a highly emotional state. It may be best to try to reassure her.
Oh, very well.
Now, Miss Carr, look carefully at the patient's legs. Can you identify these shoes?
You know I can't. You might have better luck if you removed that mask of bandage and showed us her face.
I see you don't understand. Beneath these bandages, there is no face. Only lumps of raw flesh. We shall try to rebuild a face. Let us hope we're successful. The eyes, we must await the oculist verdict. Till then, we dare not expose them to even a flicker of light. It may be total blindness. One eye is only pulp. You look unwell, Miss Carr.
I don't believe you. It's all lies.
In that case, Miss Carr, why not tear off a strip of plaster and look under the pad of bandages? But if you do, I warn you that bleeding will start again and the patient will die from shock almost immediately. You'll be charged with murder. But since you're so sure of the face under these bandages, take hold of this plaster. Tear it off.
Iris! Iris, don't!
Miss Froy. Miss Froy, can you hear me? If you can hear me, Miss Froy, hold up your hand. Miss Froy, hold up your hand. Max, look! Oh, look! That finger, she's moving.
But that's no proof it's Miss Froy. It could be anybody. For heaven's sake, Iris, don't touch those plasters. You can't know it's her. Iris!
Miss Carr!
Miss Froy! Oh, Miss Froy! Dear, dear Miss Froy!
I don't know what's behind all this, Dr. Trownitz, but you have attempted to abduct a citizen of the United Kingdom. If you make any attempt to prevent us from leaving the compartment with this lady, I shall instantly summon help.
Bravo, Prof.
What's more, if you and your friends are on this train when we reach Trieste, I shall immediately contact the authorities and make quite certain they detain you.
My dear Professor, I can assure you that neither the Baroness nor I have any intention of leaving Zabrovnia. In fact, a car is awaiting our party at the moment by the side of the railway track. If you will excuse me...
Thank heaven their party will be one fewer than they anticipated.
I've more than heaven to thank for that, my dear. If it hadn't been for you...
Victoria. This is Victoria. The train arriving at platform 5 is the boat train from Dover. The Continental Express is arriving at platform 5.
Oh, excuse me, are you Miss Froy?
Yes. Yes, sir, I am.
You don't know me, Miss Froy. My name's Ian Breverton. I'm, from the Foreign Office.
The Foreign Office? Is it my passport? Is there something...
Is there some trouble? Can I help?
Are you travelling with this lady?
In a manner of speaking. My name's Max Hare. This is Iris Carr.
Hello.
We've heard from our consul in Trieste. I know you've all had a difficult journey.
You could say that again.
But I wonder, Miss Froy, if you could spare an hour to come with me to the Foreign Office. My chief, Stephen Yardley, would like a word.
Good gracious me! Whatever for?
Well, this is scarcely the place to go into details. Perhaps you'd all better come along. Would it be enough to say that it's a matter of national security?
Have any of you seen this morning's papers?
Mr. Yardley, I'm afraid we've not had much opportunity recently for anything so mundane as reading a newspaper.
I thought not. I have a copy of today's Times. See that?
Ye gods.
Oh, my word. The poor prince. Is this true, Mr. Yardley? The Nazis have invaded Zabrovnia? The poor man, he must be in despair.
That's the very point we think you may be able to help us establish.
Me? Oh, you're quite mistaken. I know nothing at all about politics.
You lived for a year in the royal household.
Oh, yes, but I was concerned with the children's education, that's all. I took no part in anything political. Really, Mr. Yardley.
I believe you, Miss Froy. And it's not anything you did that interests us. It may be something you saw.
Something I saw?
And this something, would it have anything to do with what happened to poor Miss Froy on the train?
But I never saw anything of importance. I do assure you.
Let me explain what's supposed to have happened in Zabrovnia since you left the country at, when was it?
2 p.m. on Tuesday. It seems a lifetime away.
Well, on Tuesday afternoon at about 4 o'clock, Radio Zabrovnia announced that an armed insurrection led by Jan Pastrecht had seized key points in the capital, and there was fierce fighting in the streets. Pastrecht had apparently taken advantage of the absence of the Crown Prince to make his move. The Prince and the rest of the royal household were several hundred miles away, and the route back to the palace was barred by Pastrecht's guerrillas.
But Mr. Yardley...
Just a moment, Miss Froy. Let me finish. An hour later, the radio reported that government forces were falling back, and some had surrendered. At about 10 o'clock that night, the Commander-in-Chief sent an urgent wire to Herr Hitler, asking for Germany's help to crush the rebellion. Nazi stormtroopers crossed the Zabrovnian frontier at midnight. You were saying, Miss Froy?
But this story, it can't be correct. His Royal Highness was in the palace on Tuesday at about midday. I spoke to him myself. Oh, my goodness.
Yes, Miss Froy?
I went to the Prince's office suite. I'd never done that before. You see, I was leaving in a few hours, and I very much wanted to speak to His Royal Highness face to face. Baron Hofmeyer, his chef du cabinet, I suppose you'd call him, tried to convince me that the Prince wasn't in the capital, that he'd be away for several days. Then His Royal Highness suddenly burst out of his inner sanctum.
And that, Miss Froy, was the moment you saw something you shouldn't have seen. You saw Crown Prince Frederick in the capital, in charge of the government, just a few hours before a so-called insurrection and an apparently God-given excuse for the Nazis to march into Zabrovnia.
You mean the whole thing's a put-up job?
That's what we believe. We think there was a deal. Crown Prince Frederick wants to parade to the world as a neutral, even as a victim. So it was vital for it to appear that he was hundreds of miles away when his commander-in-chief called for German help. The truth is, the Nazis have taken over the country by arrangement, and the Crown Prince will stay on his throne as a puppet.
But from the moment Miss Froy clapped eyes on the prince in the palace on Tuesday afternoon, she was a mortal threat to the whole scheme.
The very second you left that room, Miss Froy, the prince and Hoffmeyer must have started their plotting.
Bloody woman. We are done for, Hoffmeyer.
I don't think so, Your Royal Highness. We must simply make quite certain that she doesn't leave the country. She must never cross the frontier.
But we can't arrest her without causing a diplomatic incident. Think of the British ambassador. And we can't prevent her getting on that train this afternoon. The children are going to the station to see her off.
All right. We let her get on the train.
Oh, and then what? You're not a magician, Hoffmeyer. You can't make a lady vanish.
Can I not, Your Royal Highness? Leave it to me. Leave everything to me.
And he set the whole thing up in a couple of hours. Some organizer.
But now, Miss Froy, thanks to you, we know the truth about the Crown Prince. He can't pose as an unwilling victim of the Nazis. Not to us.
We know he's hand in glove with them, and we'll act accordingly.
Don't thank me, gentlemen. It's these two young people here you should thank. Especially you, dear Iris. If you hadn't stuck to your guns, I'd never have left Dubrovnia alive. I owe what's left of my life to you.
Miss Froy.
And now, you two, what are you going to do with the rest of the day?
Miss Froy, you're nothing but an old matchmaker. All right, you've talked me into it. Iris, how about dinner and a nightclub?
What a lovely idea. I'm game.
Pick you up at 7.
Now that, Mr. Yardley, is what I call a young man who'll go far. In less than 24 hours, he's managed to find not one, but 2 ladies.
In The Lady Vanishes, dramatised for radio by Neville Teller from the novel The Wheel Spins by Ethelina White, Renée Asherson played Miss Froy, Jenny Funnell was Iris, Mark Peyton Max, and Mark Tandy Professor Wilberforce. Richard Durden played Dr. Traunitz, Michael Roberts was the Baron Hoffmeyer, Jonathan Keeble was Prince Frederick, and Karen Lewis was Mrs. Barnes. Shirley Dixon was the Baroness, Geraldine Fitzgerald was Evelyn Flood-Porter, Jan Shand was Rose Flood-Porter, and Geoffrey Beavers was Ian Breverton. Other parts were played by members of the cast. Technical presentation was by Dave Johnston, and the production assistant was Fenella Capadia.